Chapter 2073. Just now, the ones who caused the commotion were actually from the insect clan, and 3 of them at that. Their body features were too obvious. Each of them had a carapace covering them. Even the middle-aged man who looked no different from a human now had obvious insect features. On Jade Sword Island, other than the 3 figures of the insect clan, there were no other living things. The entire island was filled with corpses, but the strange thing was that the corpses were all deathly pale, as if their blood had been sucked dry. Lu Yi finally understood what had happened. Impressively, it was the 3 insect races Rizhao attacking Jade Sword Island. Jade Sword Island was only a medium-level island. Even if it had a protective array, how could it withstand the attack of the 3 insect clan members? That was why it fell in such a short period of time, and even all the cultivators were slaughtered. At this moment, 2 extremely old-looking insect clan members stood facing each other. Their faces were filled with pain, and their expressions were ferocious, as if they were enduring great torture. In between them, there was something that looked like a clay jar. It looked extremely simple, and it was unknown which era it was left behind. What made Lu Yi feel horrified was that the surface of the clay jar had blood-red tentacles that pierced through the bodies of the 2 insect clan members. He could clearly feel that the clay jar was emitting a terrifying devouring power, swallowing all the foundation of the 2 insect clan members. Even though they were in endless pain, they did not struggle to resist. Lu Yi did not know what they were doing, but it was impossible for him to leave them alone. The 3 insect clan members suddenly appeared here and did such a cruel thing. There must be some conspiracy. Especially since Lu Yi knew that the mysterious insect clan high priest knew the truth of the great influence more than anyone else. The middle-aged insect clan member who was standing guard at the side noticed Lu Yi's arrival and immediately rushed towards him. "Stop him!" Lu Yi shouted. In a flash, he passed by the middle-aged insect clan member and raised his hand to summon the fire gourd. Using his Fa-Li, he spat out a strange fire towards the 2 old insect clan members. He instinctively felt that something was wrong, so he did not show any mercy. The strange fire fiercely fell on the 2 insect clan members in an instant, enveloping them. However, in the next moment, there was a sudden change. The clay jar emitted a red light, and where the light passed, the strange fire quickly disappeared. Not annihilation, but disappearance. It gave Lu Yi the feeling that it was being absorbed by something. This was the first time he had encountered such a strange thing. The fire gourd was a treasure with tyrannical power. Previously, when he was dealing with Jianghu on the giant red star, he had only needed to casually burn her soul away. But now it had disappeared. Could it be that the clay jar was also a treasure? But even if it really was a treasure, it shouldn't have such a miraculous power. This kind of unforeseen event was obviously not right. The sacrifice is already done. You can't stop it. Old laughter rang out. It was the voice of the old insectoid on the left. Lu Yi's expression was cold. He immediately put away the fire gourd and took out the sword gourd. But before he could make another move, the 2 insectoids suddenly screamed. Their old bodies were sucked into the clay jar in the middle like flowing water. At the same time, the clay jar shattered. The 10,000 elephant sea once again sent out a huge tremor, but Lu Yi didn't seem to feel it. He only stared at the red whirlpool in the center of the Jade Sword Island. That place was originally where the clay jar was. After it shattered, the red whirlpool appeared. The whirlpool wasn't too big. It was only the height of 3 people, but the strange aura coming from the whirlpool was something Lu Yi had never felt before. It was an extremely strange aura. Lu Yi immediately retreated, distancing himself from the whirlpool. He had a feeling that if he got too close and got sucked in, he wouldn't have a good ending. Almost at the same time the whirlpool formed, in the depths of the starry sky, within the reincarnation tree's main body, the old reincarnation tree suddenly raised its head and looked in this direction. After a short while, it muttered to itself, "The loophole has been pried open. Is this the direction of the 10,000 elephant sea? Fortunately, with that person suppressing it, there shouldn't be too much trouble." He lowered his eyes and sighed softly. "The reincarnation tree. I'm afraid it won't be able to hold on this time. The insectoids have jumped out. They must have sensed something. I have to make plans early. Near the Jade Sword Island, the middle-aged insectoid fought with Yen Miao and Luan Xiao for a while and then hurriedly fled for his life. His mission had been completed, so he naturally had to leave this troublesome place. It wasn't that he wasn't a match for the two women. Lu Yi immediately sensed something and chased after him. Today's change was too sudden, and he was now confused. The two old insectoids were already dead, so he could only capture this middle-aged insectoid and ask him about the situation. What kind of sacrifice was the insectoids performing? What was with that red whirlpool? He could only look for clues from the insectoid. However, the insectoid was at the late stage of the Sunshine Realm, so it wouldn't be easy for Lu Yi to catch up with him. Fortunately, in front of the insectoid, a tyrannical aura suddenly appeared and rushed towards him. Jiao Yan. She obviously came from the Mermaid Island. She probably sensed something strange here and teleported to the Mermaid Island just like Lu Yi. She just happened to intercept the middle-aged insectoid's escape route. The insectoid was shocked. He had fled in this direction because he sensed that Lu Yi and the others were coming from this direction. He was certain that there were no other Sunshine Realm cultivators in this direction. Who would have thought that another one would suddenly appear? Moreover, the aura was extraordinarily strong. She was obviously at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. Terrified, he quickly dashed to the side. Lu Yi snorted coldly. A drop of precious blood exploded, and he activated the blood escape technique. His speed increased sharply, and he caught up with the insectoid in less than 10 breaths. The sea of blood spread out and enveloped the insectoid. 3 breaths later, Jiao Yan charged into the sea of blood. The sound of an intense battle could be heard from the sea of blood. A moment later, the sea of blood receded. Lu Yi carried the middle-aged insectoid who was covered in blood and gasping for breath, and said in a cold voice, "I ask, you answer. If you dare to say no, I'll make you beg for death." With his and Jiao Yan's combined strength, a late-stage Sunshine Realm cultivator wouldn't be able to cause any waves in his sea of blood. The middle-aged insectoid snickered and spat out a mouthful of blood at Lu Ye's face. "Kill me!" The blood was stopped by Lu Ye's spiritual power. It was obvious that he didn't care about his life at all. Very good. Lu Yi stabbed his sword into the insectoid's heart and twisted it. The insectoid's eyes widened. His body stiffened for a moment, and then he went limp. Lu Yi threw the insectoid to Miao Yan, who had hurried over. "Take him back and look after him. I'll deal with him later." He didn't kill the insectoid. He only heavily injured him and left him with a little chance of survival. When the matter here was settled, he could use the soul battle to pry into the insectoid's memory and see if he could find any useful information. "What happened?" Jiao Yan asked in a low voice. Lu Yi turned to look at her and replied, "I don't know much." He then told her everything that he saw. Ever since Jiao Yan revealed her true appearance to him outside the Yuan realm, they hadn't seen each other again. Lu Yi could feel that Jiao Yan had been deliberately avoiding him. Since that was the case, he didn't want to force her. If it weren't for this unforeseen event, Jiao Yan probably wouldn't have met him face to face. "Let's go take a look." Jiao Yan heard him and rushed towards Jade Sword Island. It wasn't just the two of them who were rushing towards Jade Sword Island. At this moment, all the Sunshine cultivators in Wanxiang Sea were rushing over. The commotion just now was too big, and it really made people curious. Naturally, they would come over to investigate the situation. Soon, they arrived at Jade Sword Island. Jiao Yan's expression changed as she looked at the blood-red vortex. "This is, senior sister, do you recognize it?" Lu Yi asked. Jiao Yan shook her head. "I don't, but the aura coming from it seems to be useful to me." "Useful to you?" Lu Yi was surprised. Jiao Yan was already at the peak of sunshine. The aura that was useful to her was definitely not ordinary. "I don't know." Jiao Yan's face was full of confusion. She was clearly in a state of confusion. She could feel that the aura coming from the blood-red vortex was very useful to her. If she could cultivate in this environment for a long time, she might be able to reap great benefits. But this feeling was very vague, as if there was a layer between them. While the two were talking, ripples suddenly appeared in the blood-red vortex. Vaguely, a figure could be seen inside. Something is coming. Lu Yi immediately judged. Is this the insect path? In fact, when Lu Yi first saw the blood-red vortex, he felt that it was somewhat similar to the insect path. But he couldn't understand why the insect race would pay the price of 2 sunshine cultivators to open something similar to the insect path. Where does the other end of the blood-red vortex lead to? Almost at the same time as Lu Ye's voice fell, a figure squeezed out of the blood-red vortex. It was indeed squeezing, as if it took a lot of effort to pass through the blood-red vortex. It was an existence with the head of an ox and the body of a human. There were 2 ox horns on his forehead. The left horn was broken, and the cut was smooth and neat. It was unknown what cut it off. This was a Yao. He was extremely tall and carried a club bone in his hand. His nostrils exhaled a fiery aura. His entire body exuded an extremely fierce aura. It was as if he had just returned from a bloody battlefield. The spiritual power fluctuations on his body were not weak either. He was in the late sunshine stage. Walking out of the blood-red vortex, the ox demon looked around and fixed his gaze on Lu Yi and Jiao Yan. He raised the club bone in his hand and asked in a booming voice, 2 little insects, where is this? But before Lu Yi could answer, he suddenly sniffed around. Then his expression changed. No, this is not the Star Abyss. Ha, this is a slaughterhouse. As if it had discovered something interesting, the bull monster pounced towards Lu Yi as soon as it finished speaking. Be careful, Jiao Yan shouted. She flashed in front of Lu Yi and met the ox demon head-on. The moment their spiritual power collided, Jiao Yan's body shook and she was immediately sent flying. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. In terms of cultivation, she had reached the peak. Even if there were people stronger than her in this starry sky, they would not be able to defeat her so easily. But this ox demon who had walked out of the blood-red vortex had done it. It's the new year. In a trance, it's the new year again. Old Emo wishes all the officials and lords a smooth journey, good luck, good health, and rolling in wealth. Chapter 2074. The moment they collided, Jiao Yan clearly sensed the opponent's cultivation. It should have been weaker than hers, but she was the one at a disadvantage. This was inconceivable. Just as she steadied herself, she saw Lu Yi flying towards her uncontrollably. He saw that Jiao Yan was no match for the ox demon and rushed to help her, but he was sent flying by the ox demon's staff. Jiao Yan quickly steadied herself and blocked Lu Ye's back with her hands. She channeled her magic power into him, helping him to neutralize the momentum. Lu Ye's right hand trembled slightly. He suppressed the roiling blood in his chest and said in a low voice, "Senior sister, be careful. There's something wrong with this guy." The ox demon that suddenly appeared from the blood-red vortex was different from all the other Rizhao he had seen before. In terms of cultivation, this ox demon was actually about the same as the captured insect Rizhao, but their real strength was far from each other. There seemed to be an extremely strange power hidden in his opponent's mana. It was this power that made his mana more resilient and more destructive. Otherwise, with his current foundation, it would not be so difficult for him to fight a late Sunshine Realm cultivator alone. However, that instant of confrontation had allowed him to clearly realize one thing. He was actually no match for this bull demon. Jiao Yan undoubtedly felt the same. She used her divine sense and said, "I'll hold him back. You kill him." Jiao Yan originally had a lot of doubts, but this ox demon that appeared out of nowhere was obviously not someone she could communicate with. The opponent was so strong that she could only kill him first. Lu Yi nodded. At the same time, he pressed his hand on Jiao Yan's shoulder and channeled his magic power. Jiao Yan felt something and roughly understood Lu Ye's plan. She reached out and grabbed at the void, and a silver spear appeared in her hand. She waved the spear gently, and her aura flowed. It was a valiant and heroic move. The ox demon just stood there calmly and hooked his finger at Jiao Yan with a contemptuous look. He obviously did not put Jiao Yan in his eyes. Jiao Yan was furious. She rushed forward with her spear and fought with the ox demon in the blink of an eye. Jiao Yan used her magic weapon. She was undoubtedly going all out. In this state, there were not many opponents in the entire universe who could match her. Spear shadows filled the sky. The secret technique was exquisite. On the other hand, the ox monster's movements looked extremely clumsy and slow. However, such an ox monster was able to block all of Jiao Yan's full-powered attacks with ease. Jiao Yan's eyes were trembling. On one hand, she was shocked by the ox demon's strength. On the other hand, she was excited because she suddenly saw her future path from this ox demon. Although it was just a trace of it, it was still hope. Since ancient times, countless peak Rizhao level cultivators. Star Abyss. What is this place? She had never heard of it before. Outside the intense battle, Lu Yi had already taken out his sword gourd. This bull monster was definitely the strongest monster he had encountered so far. Even Jiao Yan, who had gone all out, was suppressed by it, let alone him, who was only in the early phase of the Sunshine Realm. If he wanted to kill this bull monster, he could only rely on the power of the sword gourd. Jiao Yan had made the suggestion because she knew that he had a spirit treasure. The mouth of the calabash turned upside down. Sword light flashed. Lu Yi shouted, "Senior sister." When the voice rang out, a spirit pattern appeared out of nowhere on Jiao Yan's shoulder. It quickly turned into a circle of light and enveloped her. It was the void spiritual tattoo that Lu Yi had left on her. At the same time, a void spiritual tattoo appeared beside Lu Yi. The sword light pierced through Jiao Yan's shadow and went straight for the ox demon's strong body. Obviously, the bull demon hadn't expected this turn of events. The moment he sensed that something was wrong, his body shook and he shouted, "Coiling dragon!" A dragon roar faintly sounded. A dragon shadow suddenly appeared on his body and coiled around his waist. The dragon raised its head and bit the sword light. The sword light from the calabash was actually bitten by the dragon head. The sound of metal grinding against metal was extremely ear-piercing. The sword light became brighter and brighter, but it could not break through the dragon's bite. Lu Yi was shocked. Ever since he was promoted to Sunshine, he had truly understood the power of the attribute treasure. He had repeatedly used the attribute treasure to kill powerful enemies with ease. Even a powerhouse like Great Demon Venerable Zixien could not resist the terrifying power of the attribute treasure, but this bull demon had done it. What kind of secret technique was that? What kind of method was that? Lu Yi had no time to think. He gritted his teeth and desperately urged the sword light. He was the owner of the calabash, so the sword light was naturally controlled by him. The effect was minimal. The bright sword light slowly pierced forward at a speed visible to the naked eye, but it was tightly bitten by the dragon's bite. If it did not break through the dragon's bite, it could not hurt the ox demon's body. Lu Yi could feel that the power of the sword light was rapidly weakening under such a stalemate. The power of the calabash was strongest at the beginning. After killing the enemy and encountering obstacles, it would be consumed and then needed to be recovered. But there was no chance for Lu Yi to recover. The ox demon used a secret technique that Lu Yi did not understand at all to block the sword light from the calabash. As time passed, the bright sword light quickly dimmed. In just a few breaths of time, the sword light shattered with a crisp crack. The sword light that cost hundreds of millions of spirit jades to nurture was completely gone. If he wanted to restore the power of the calabash, he had to nurture it again. And the dragon shadow that coiled around the ox demon was clearly not as solid as before. The ox demon lowered his head to look at the dragon shadow on his body and flew into a rage. His scarlet eyes glared at Lu Yi. "You dare damage my Dao power? Take your treasure to make up for it." Was it easy for him to painstakingly condense this bit of Dao power? This was his capital to establish himself in Star Abyss. He did not expect it to be damaged in a slaughterhouse. When the last word fell, he wrapped himself in a demonic wind and charged at Lu Yi. "Fellow Taoist Lu, I'll help you." A vigorous voice came over and pounced at the ox demon. Lu Yi knew who it was when he heard the voice. It was Five Color Island Sui Lin. Three World Island and Five Color Island had always been on good terms. Lu Yi had interacted with Sui Lin several times over the years and was not a stranger. For Sui Lin to appear here, it was obvious that he had sensed the commotion here and came to investigate. Not only him, there were also other Sunshine Immortals overseeing the other top-notch spiritual islands rushing over. Some were already nearby, and some were still on the way. Be careful! Lu Yi hurriedly shouted a warning. Sui Lin clearly did not know how powerful this ox demon was. Charging out rashly would definitely not end well. Scram! The ox demon was in a violent mood. Facing Sui Lin's attack, he casually swung his rod. Big words. Sui Lin came quickly and left quickly. His sturdy body fell diagonally towards the myriad elephant sea under the impact of the huge force. Seeing that he was about to fall into the sea, a hand grabbed his arm and lifted him up. Sui Lin had a fearful expression. He raised his head and was extremely grateful. So it's fellow Taoist Gu Tai. Thank you for your help. Gu Tai nodded. Fellow Taoist Sui Lin is too polite. What's the situation with this demon? He had also just arrived here and did not understand the situation. When he saw Sui Lin in danger, he helped him. Otherwise, if Sui Lin really fell into the myriad elephant sea, he would definitely be eroded by the seawater. With Sui Lin's cultivation, his life would not be in danger. However, after being eroded, his magic power would become impure, which was also a big problem. I'm not sure. His strength is strange. Sui Lin recalled the moment when he came into contact with the ox demon. He was actually sent flying without any strength to fight back. That was because he was from the stone tribe and had the endurance. If it was someone else with a weak physique, he would have been injured. This is the insect path? Gu Tai noticed the red whirlpool in the center of the Jade Sword Island. He vaguely felt that it was an insect path, but it was not the same as a normal insect path. Even with his vast knowledge, he could not determine it in a short time. Almost at the same time he was observing the red whirlpool, ripples appeared in the whirlpool, and a figure was faintly discernible within. Someone is coming, Gu Tai said in a low voice. At the same time, Lu Yi, who was teaming up with Jiao Yan to fight the ox demon, also noticed the change in the red whirlpool. His expression immediately fell. The ox demon that suddenly appeared was so powerful. If another one came, who on the myriad elephant sea could fight against it? From the battle just now, it could be seen that only attribute treasures could pose a threat to an expert like the ox demon. However, the power of the two attribute treasures in his hands had been exhausted. What could he use to fight against the enemy? As this thought flashed, Lu Ye's divine sense surged and transmitted his voice everywhere. Fellow Taoists, the change in the Jade Sword Island today is related to the insect race. The enemy is powerful and has strange abilities. Please join forces to fight against the enemy. Do not underestimate them. It's related to the insect race. Many people in the sunshine looked serious. As early as a few years ago, the Three-World Island had revealed the conspiracy of the insect race and the arrival of the general trend. These years, all the major forces had been investigating this matter, but there were no clues. They only knew that this was a disaster that was about to sweep through the entire starry sky. Unexpectedly, today's matter was also related to the insect race. Then, it must be related to the arrival of the general trend. If so, they could not stay out of it. No matter what, they had to deal with today's trouble first. Perhaps they could find some clues through today's matter. Thinking so, Gu Tai and Sui Lin looked at each other and rushed towards the red whirlpool. Before the two of them could get close, a figure squeezed out of the whirlpool. Sure enough, it's related to the insect race. Gu Tai's expression was cold because the one who came was an insect race member. As soon as this insect race member appeared, he sniffed and then looked in the direction of Mermaid Island. There's the aura of a clansman. He's alive. The captured insect race member Ri Zhao Ri was escorted back to Mermaid Island by Luan Xiaoa. He could actually smell the traces. Gu Tai and Sui Lin had already joined forces to fight. Against the insect race, the two of them would not be lenient. Sui Lin, who had suffered a loss once, was much more careful this time. However, after fighting for a while, he was shocked. This was because in terms of cultivation, this insect race member who suddenly appeared had a cultivation level that was similar to him and Gu Tai. However, in a 1 versus 2 situation, he was able to defeat Gu Tai and Gu Tai. In just a short while, they both suffered injuries of varying degrees. Fortunately, Ri from the other spiritual islands arrived in time and joined in, barely stabilizing the situation. End of chapter. Chapter 2075. Following the commotion, more and more Rikutsu rushed here. After the insect, another enemy appeared from the red vortex. The battle between the three groups near Jade Sword Island was extremely intense. Lu Ye's battlefield had already turned into a sea of blood. He and Jiao Yen were not the only ones in the sea of blood. There were also two other Rikutsu who joined later, and their cultivation was at the middle stage. But even with the convenience of the sea of blood, the four of them joining forces to deal with the bull demon was unable to gain any advantage. The bull demon's strength was far beyond imagination. The other two groups were also like this, fighting with numbers. Although there were not many Rikutsu on Wanxiangxi's side, there were at least 20 of them. On Lu Ye's side, it was 4 against 1. The other two groups were even more exaggerated, with 7 or 8 Rikutsu joining forces to besiege one enemy. But even so, no group was able to gain the upper hand. On the contrary, the Rikutsu on Lu Ye's side were constantly injured. One of them was even accidentally injured and had to withdraw from the battlefield. Lu Yi was anxious. The current situation was extremely unfavorable for his side. The red vortex was still there. If 3 experts could walk out from it, then there might be more. Once such a situation occurred, there would be no more Rikutsu on Wanxiangxi to stop the enemy. He had to kill one of them first, or find a way to close the red vortex. But this thing was opened by the insect race through an inexplicable ritual. Perhaps other than the insect race, no one knew how to close it. Then he had to kill one of them first. Lu Yi made up his mind. In an instant, he was already behind the bull demon. He slowly exhaled, and all his qi, blood, and fa li fiercely poured into his right arm. In an instant, his right arm swelled up. The Panshan saber was suddenly unsheathed. Saber drawl, he had not used this move for a long time. Relatively speaking, the power of a treasure was stronger, and it was easier to use. But he had not given up on this move. He had been using his own fa li to nourish the spirit pattern in the scabbard. Under the premise of not using a treasure, this was definitely the strongest move he could use. The saber slashed on the bull demon's protective fa li. Just like in the previous battle, he felt an incomparably tough feedback. Even though he had experienced it many times, Lu Yi still felt incredulous. It was hard to imagine that the bull demon could refine his fa li to such a degree. The saber draw's power was still very strong. The previous attacks that landed on the bull demon's body could not even break through his protective fa li. But this one, there was some effect. After the violent power broke through the bull demon's protective fa li, it cut a small wound on his body. Oh? The bull demon revealed an interested look. You actually managed to injure me. Well done. A palm slapped down on Lu Ye's head, but Lu Yi was already prepared. He dodged into the depths of the blood sea, a helpless expression on his face. If the saber draw could not kill the enemy, his other moves would be even more useless. Moreover, the power of brightness was easily neutralized by the enemy. One must know that even if he only cut a small wound on the bull demon's body just now, the power of Fang had already entangled it. The power of Fang had become stronger as he advanced to sunshine. Even a powerhouse like Changfeng had to spend several days to slowly dissolve it, but for this bull demon, it was actually a piece of cake. Could he only ask Wuxia to come out? The power of a treasure could not kill the bull demon, but a real treasure would not. The strongest on the Wanxiangxi was not him, nor was it Jiao Yen. It was Huaxi's little melon. But he had seen Huaxi in seclusion at the mermaid clan's territory. If possible, he did not want to disturb Huaxi at this juncture. But now, there was no other way but to ask Huaxi to come out. Just as he was thinking this, a violent tremor suddenly came from the bottom of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. This kind of tremor had occurred twice before when Rizhao had opened the red vortex. Lu Yi didn't know what was going on. But now it appeared again, and this time the tremor was even greater than the previous two. Accompanied by this tremor, a vast and boundless aura gushed out from the depths of the Wanxiangxi. In the next moment, the aura condensed into a beam and descended somewhere. In the Blood Sea, Lu Yi looked up at the source of the aura. His vision penetrated the Blood Sea and saw the situation on Jade Sword Island. This is... His expression changed, revealing a surprised expression. Constellation Hall. A sunshine's exclamation came from outside. Because at this very moment, a simple and unadorned hall had appeared on the Jade Sword Island. Impressively, it had the appearance of the Constellation Palace, but what appeared here was clearly not the main body of the Constellation Palace. It was only a projection because it looked illusory. The projection of the Constellation Hall wrapped the red vortex tightly. In the Blood Sea, the bull demon, who had been calm and unruffled even when surrounded by the four sunshines, changed his expression. "There's a treasure here?" As if he had seen something inconceivable, he shouted and immediately rushed toward the red vortex. Not only him, but the other two experts who came out of the red vortex also rushed in that direction. They were extremely frightened, like stray dogs. They were like two different people compared to their previous invincible strength. Lu Yi sensed the bull demon's movements. He hesitated for a moment, but did not stop him. Instead, he dispersed the Blood Sea and let him go. No matter what the appearance of the Constellation Hall's projection meant, just from the bull demon's reaction, it was definitely not a good thing for these uninvited guests. They seemed to want to leave through the red vortex. Lu Yi did not have the confidence to keep them here. Since that was the case, letting them go was not a bad choice. But what Lu Yi did not expect was that these three uninvited guests, who were fine when they came, could not go back. The three figures were blocked outside the Constellation Hall's projection. No matter how hard they tried, they could not break through the projection seal. Moreover, as time passed, the Constellation Hall's projection continued to shrink, and the red vortex slowly became unstable in the process. Lu Ye's eyes lit up. He was still having a headache about how to close the red vortex. He did not expect the Constellation Hall to use its power. Looking at the situation when the Constellation Hall's projection shrank to a certain extent, the red vortex would definitely collapse. The Constellation Hall was indeed sentient. Back when he first came into contact with the Constellation Hall, Lu Yi had such a conjecture. Back then, the Constellation Hall pulled him in alone and gave him a strange mission. Although he did not leave his name on the Constellation list, he gained many benefits because of it. Thinking back to the bull demon's words just now, it was obvious that the Constellation Hall had sensed the red vortex and was using its own power to destroy it. With the treasure's power, the three sunshine experts in the Wanxiang Sea could not do anything. After a while, the three of them clearly realized that things were not going well. They looked at each other and fled in three different directions. Seeing this, Lu Yi was shocked and hurriedly shouted, "Stop them, don't let them escape." Previously, he was willing to let the three sunshine experts go because he was not as strong as them and could not do anything to them. However, since they could not go back, he could not let them escape. Once experts with such strength escaped from here, it would be a disaster no matter which galaxy they went to. Other than the galaxies where the top realms were located, no other galaxy in the universe could take out the resources of the Wanxiang Sea to deal with them. He had to kill them all. Even if he could not kill all three of them, killing one would be good enough. After shouting, Lu Yi took the lead and rushed toward the bull demon. Jiao Yen held her long spear and followed closely by her side. Seeing this, the other sunshine experts did not dare to be negligent. They followed the previous formation to intercept the other two enemies. The bull demon was in the late sunshine realm, so he was very fast. However, no matter how fast he could not be faster than Lu Yi, who had activated the blood escape technique. In an instant, Lu Yi caught up with him. The sea of blood spread out and enveloped him again. Jiao Yen took the opportunity to kill her way into the sea of blood. Under Lu Ye's protection, she stabbed her spear at the bull demon. The bull demon's senses were very sharp. Moreover, he had fought with Jiao Yen many times before, so he naturally knew how strong Jiao Yen was. He did not dare to be careless and struck her with his staff. Jiao Yen gritted her teeth and blocked the attack. With a loud bang, the sea of blood churned. Jiao Yen was stunned and blinked her eyes. This time, she was not sent flying by the bull demon like before. The power of the bull demon's attack was obviously weaker than before. She was not sure and continued to fight the bull demon. Lu Yi had already taken out a musical note and was about to contact the three-world island and ask them to invite Wuxia out of seclusion. At this moment, Jiao Yan's voice was heard. "He's become weaker." Lu Yi was stunned. "Although I don't know why, he's indeed become weaker and weaker." Jiao Yan had already fought with the bull demon several times. She could clearly feel the bull demon's counterattack. As a peak sunshine expert, she could not be wrong about this. Lu Yi immediately paid attention to the bull demon and found that it was just as Jiao Yan said. The bull demon had become much weaker. In just a short moment, the bull demon had gone from being invincible to being on par with Jiao Yan. Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. She quickly spread out her spiritual sense and checked the situation of the other two groups. She found that the other two groups were the same as her. The other two strong opponents, who were originally unparalleled in the world, were obviously weakened. And this change? Lu Yi turned her head and looked in the direction of the Jade Sword Island. She saw the shrinking Constellation Palace projection and the swaying red vortex. Her heart gradually became clear. From the looks of it, it was due to the suppression of the red vortex that caused the strength of the bull demon and the other experts to weaken. No wonder the three of them could not wait to return. It was obvious that they knew what would happen next. "There's no need to disturb Wuxia." Lu Yi raised the mountain pandao in her hand, looked in the bull demon's direction, and rushed forward. "It's time for our turn. Looks like I've gained a lot this time. I might be able to use this opportunity to clarify a lot of things that I didn't understand before. I might even be able to find out more information about the general situation." Lu Yi had a feeling that the three enemies who had appeared out of nowhere were closely related to the general situation. "Wishing everyone a happy new year. I wish everyone luck in the year of the dragon and a bright future. I'll be going out to pay my New Year's greetings. I'll be a little busy during the first month. Sometimes I have to go out or have guests at home. I can only update once." End of chapter. Chapter 2076. The Blood Sea was turbulent as several figures shuttled back and forth. After the Constellation Palace's projection suppressed the red vortex, the originally invincible bull demon's strength rapidly weakened. After a while, the bull demon was besieged by Lu Yi and the others and had no strength to fight back. At this time, the strength he displayed was the standard of a normal late-stage sunshine expert. His previous strength was obviously not right. Jiao Yan's spear pierced through the bull demon, and the other two sunshine experts pounced on him. Lu Yi took advantage of the situation and slashed with his blade. The battle ended. The bull demon was heavily injured and unconscious. At this moment, he had lost the ability to easily dissolve the power of brightness. A strange force wrapped around his wound, hindering his recovery. Lu Yi kept the Blood Sea and looked at the other two battlefields. Without exception, the other two enemies were also taken down. No one killed them. Obviously, all the sunshine experts were curious about the strength they had displayed. Naturally, they wanted to keep them alive. A group of sunshine experts gathered at Lu Ye's side. Now that he was the master of the Wanxiang Sea and was the first to arrive, everyone naturally wanted to ask about the situation. However, before everyone could gather together, something happened on the Jade Sword Island. The red vortex suppressed by the Constellation Palace's projection rippled violently, and a black shadow loomed on the other side. "Something is coming." Jiao Yan obviously saw the change on the other side. She clenched her silver spear and secretly urged her "Hey." Lu Ye's expression was solemn. He had deeply experienced the bull demon's strength, so he was naturally very vigilant. After carefully observing for a while, he felt relieved. It shouldn't be coming. Although he didn't know why the red vortex alarmed the Constellation Palace, with the power of the treasure suppressing it, no matter what kind of strong existence was on the other side, it wouldn't be as easy as before. This could be seen from the fact that the shadow on the other side couldn't condense. And according to the current situation, the red vortex wouldn't even last long before it shattered. Almost at the same time as Lu Ye's voice fell, the Constellation Palace's projection covering the red vortex suddenly faded inexplicably. This projection wasn't a real entity, and it looked illusory and ethereal. Now that it faded, it was almost undetectable. At this moment, the shadow on the other side suddenly condensed, and the red vortex shook violently. "Not good," Lu Yi exclaimed. This situation was completely different from what he had expected. He had no idea why the projection of the Constellation Hall would suddenly fade. However, this obviously gave the other party an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. The red vortex wriggled. The fourth uninvited guest had arrived at the myriad phenomenon see today. Judging from the blurry shadow just now, Lu Yi thought that some fierce enemy was going to come out, but when he saw what it was this time, he couldn't help but be stunned. Jiao Yan was also dumbfounded. "What is this?" Jiao Yan frowned. "A bridal sedan?" Lu Yi replied hesitantly. The main reason was that the scene before his eyes was too miraculous. This time, the thing that had charged into the myriad phenomenon sea from the red vortex was not a living being of flesh and blood, but a bridal sedan. It looked like something used in the mortal world to pick up a bride and get married. The bridal sedan was covered with red decorations, and there were 2 large red flowers inlaid on both sides of the sedan. It looked very festive. The other Rizhao also saw this strange scene, and they were all surprised. No one could figure out what was going on, and what was this bridal sedan. Many Rizhao probed with their divine senses, but in the investigation of the many Rizhao, this bridal sedan was the most ordinary one. There was nothing special about it. The more this was the case, the more vigilant the Rizhao became. Something strange that could charge out of the red vortex could not be ordinary no matter how they thought about it. The fact that they couldn't detect it meant that this bridal sedan was strange beyond imagination. A soft groan was heard. It was the unconscious bull demon slowly waking up. The physique of the demon clan was indeed strong. Even after suffering such serious injuries, he was able to wake up. The other 2 uninvited guests were still unconscious. When the bull demon opened his eyes, he realized that he was bound. He turned his head and looked around. His gaze suddenly fixed on the bridal sedan, and he immediately exclaimed, "A ghost sedan!" Lu Yi turned his head and looked at him. His heart skipped a beat. The bridal sedan and the bull demon should have come from the same place. Moreover, from the bull demon's reaction, he obviously recognized this bridal sedan and knew something. He immediately asked, "What is this? Tell me everything you know." The bull demon said eagerly, "Yes, take me there first. I want to get on the sedan. When I get on the ghost sedan, I'll tell you everything you want to know." Lu Yi was surprised. What's the benefit of getting on the sedan? If not, the bull demon would not be so enthusiastic. The bull demon did not answer. He only shouted anxiously, "Hurry up and take me on the sedan before it's too late." Lu Yi wanted to ask why it was too late. At this moment, the ghost sedan, which had been unresponsive all this time, suddenly floated. Then, a strange power spread out from the ghost sedan. It was like divine sense, but it was not. Lu Yi had never felt this power before. The power was as vast as the sea. In an instant, it swept across the entire Wanxiang Sea and then radiated to the Wanxiang Galaxy. It suddenly retracted and condensed on Jiao Yan. Jiao Yan instinctively felt that something was wrong. The door of the ghost sedan suddenly opened. A red ribbon flew out from it and rolled toward Jiao Yan. It was so fast that even an expert like Jiao Yan did not have time to react. The red ribbon wrapped around her and suddenly retracted. Jiao Yan flew toward the ghost sedan with a stunned expression. She plunged into the sedan and disappeared. After taking Jiao Yan, the ghost sedan was about to fly away. "You want to leave?" Lu Yi was furious. He quickly chased after the ghost sedan. If it was anyone else, he would have let it go, but Jiao Yan, the bull demon, shouted, "Take me with you." He looked as if he was afraid that Lu Yi would leave him behind. Lu Yi did not want to pay attention to him, but he thought that this guy obviously knew something about the ghost sedan. Perhaps he would be useful. He grabbed the bull demon and used the blood escape technique. His body turned into a bloody light. When he made his move, the other Rizhao also chased after him. Although they came from different galaxies and came from different forces, they had stayed on the Wanxiang Sea for so many years. Many of them were friends with Jiao Yan. Naturally, they would not stand by and watch. The ghost sedan's speed was not fast at first, but it was obviously increasing by a lot. Lu Yi, who was chasing after it, saw that the ghost sedan was getting farther and farther away from him. No matter how he used the blood escape technique, it was useless. He gritted his teeth and raised his Pan-Shan saber. As his magic power surged, a huge saber light slashed toward the ghost sedan. The saber hit the ghost sedan, but the giant saber light did not damage it at all. Instead, with this attack, a large red ribbon floated out of the ghost palanquin once again, whipping towards Lu Yi across the air. It was completely different from Jiao Yan's previous encounter. This red ribbon only rolled toward Jiao Yan, but whipped toward Lu Yi. It was as if the ghost sedan had retaliated. Almost at the same time that Lu Yi saw the red ribbon, his vision was covered by a blood-red hue. He vaguely heard the sound of something breaking. His whole body suddenly became sticky, followed by a wave of dizziness. His protective magic power was instantly shattered, and a series of cracking sounds came from his body. He did not know how many bones in his body were broken. Only then did he realize that under the ghost sedan's attack, the bull demon in his hand was whipped into a bloody mist without making a sound. He was also heavily injured. His body tightened, as if something had wrapped around him. Then, his body flew uncontrollably in a certain direction. His consciousness also became dizzy. The Rizhao chased for a while, but the ghost sedan could no longer be seen. Because at that moment, the ghost sedan seemed to have escaped into the underworld and disappeared. This made them want to chase after it, but they did not know where to start. Oh no! Wu Qima's face was ashen. He did not care about Jiao Yan's life or death. They did not have much of a friendship, but nothing could happen to Lu Yi. Not to mention that Lu Yi was Su Yuqing's Taoist companion. He was also the master of Mount Fengxuan. If something happened to him, it would not be a small problem. Fellow Taoist Wu, don't worry. Fellow Taoist Lu should be fine. Just now, the sedan did not seem to want to kill him. Sui Lin stood beside Wu Qima and comforted him. Lu Yi himself was in a daze because of his heavy injuries, so he did not know what had happened at all. However, the others saw it clearly. His giant blade slash welcomed the counterattack of the bridal sedan chair. Under that attack, not even the bones of the ox monster remained. Logically speaking, Lu Yi should not have been spared either. But in reality, the moment the red ribbon touched Lu Yi, it changed direction and swept him into the bridal sedan chair. From what they had seen before, the strange sedan should have only wanted to capture Jiao Yan, but for some reason, it captured Lu Yi as well. As for why it captured Jiao Yan, no one knew. If it was because of the woman's identity, it would be wrong, because Jiao Yan was not the only female Rizhao present. Since that was the case, it could only be because of cultivation. Among the Rizhao present, Jiao Yan's cultivation was the highest. Of course, this was only a guess. No one knew what the reason was. Just now, the bull demon called the sedan a ghost sedan, and he wanted to get on it. A Rizhao suddenly spoke. He was the one who had joined forces with Lu Yi just now. Naturally, he had heard the bull demon's words. If that's the case, there might be some benefits in the ghost sedan. Whether there are benefits or not, we will know after asking. Sui Lin turned his head and looked at the other two unconscious enemies. What the bull demon knew, they should also know. Not only the ghost sedan, the Rizhao wanted to know more. On Jade Sword Island, the projection of Constellation Hall had disappeared. The red vortex had also disappeared. The chaos had ended with the disappearance of the Island Lord of All Things Island and the Island Lord of Three World Island. After interrogating the two uninvited guests, the various Rizhao finally understood some secrets that had never been known to others. They also finally understood why the general trend was descending. After this battle, with all things sea as the center, the various forces worked hard to accumulate their strength in order to deal with the general trend. For a time, the number of large-scale and high-level battles in the entire starry sky decreased. End of chapter. Chapter 2077. In the slightly dark and enclosed environment, the light of the candlelight illuminated the surroundings. When Lu Yi woke up, he felt pain all over his body. A familiar fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. Behind his head was a warm and soft pillow. On his chest, there was a hand covering his heart. A gentle manna came from the palm, which was obviously helping him heal. Lu Yi did not move. He slowly recalled what had happened before. He chased after the ghost sedan and caused the ghost sedan to counterattack. He almost died on the spot. He did not die, but the bull demon that was with him died without a trace. Many things before that were unclear. He vaguely had some guesses, but he could not confirm them. Your injuries are not too serious. You should be fine after a few days of rest. In the quiet environment, Jiao Yan's voice sounded, as if a burden had been lifted. Seeing that Lu Yi did not respond, Jiao Yan frowned. Are you going to lie like this forever? Lu Yi suddenly showed a pained expression. My head is dizzy, and my spiritual soul is a little unstable. He used the matter of his spiritual soul as an excuse. Jiao Yan really could not judge whether it was true or false. She could only check the condition of Lu Ye's physical body. Whether there was anything wrong with his spirit ocean, she was completely unsure. Thinking back to when Lu Yi was thrown into the room with his body covered in blood, her heart skipped a beat. She almost thought that Lu Yi was dead. She checked his body in fear and found that the miserable state of Lu Ye's body wasn't his own, but someone else's. Then continued to rest. Jiao Yan sighed. She was at her wit's end. Since the last time, she had been avoiding Lu Yi and tried not to have anything to do with him. Several years had passed, but she did not expect that some things could not be avoided. God seemed to be against her, throwing her and Lu Yi into such a completely enclosed environment. A man and a woman alone together day and night made her feel uncomfortable all over. Lu Yi lay down and realized that he was lying on Jiao Yan's lap. Obviously, Jiao Yan had been taking care of him while he was unconscious. There was a moment of silence. Lu Yi was still thinking about what had happened before, but Jiao Yan's mind was filled with all kinds of thoughts. After all, it was impossible to pretend that nothing had happened. Moreover, the future of this trip was uncertain. No one knew if the two of them would be trapped here forever and never be able to escape. If that was the case, then they could only rely on each other for survival. Since they could not avoid it, they would have to talk about it. At any rate, they could not continue living in such an awkward atmosphere in the future. They were all cultivators. There was no need for them to care so much about certain matters. With that thought, Jiao Yan made her decision. I'll talk and you listen. Don't ask and don't speak, she suddenly said. Lu Ye's train of thought was interrupted as she looked into Jiao Yan's eyes. Because Jiao Yan was lying on Lu Ye's lap, their eyes met and they were almost within reach. Jiao Yan's eyes flickered, and she avoided his gaze. Tell me. Lu Yi finally realized what was going on. Jiao Yan took a deep breath. Although she had already made up her mind, she still found it hard to say. She gritted her teeth and said, You're a sunshine now, so you have some understanding of the external incarnation technique. Bansi. Her voice trembled slightly, but she forced herself to calm down. Is one of my incarnations. Back then, when Shino was in charge of Wushuang Island, I was worried, so I sent my incarnation to help him. Shin did not know about this. He has never seen my incarnation. Lu Yi thought to himself, just as I thought. He had already guessed this before. If Bansi was really Jiao Yan's real body, then many things could not be explained. After all, Jiao Yan was a peak sunshine cultivator. How could she be affected by the heaven-desired demonic spider? Therefore, Bansi's cultivation was real because she was just an incarnation. Seeing Lu Ye's reaction, Jiao Yan was surprised. You already knew? Lu Yi just stared at her and blinked. Jiao Yan was confused. What's wrong? Lu Yi raised his hand and pinched his mouth. His meaning was obvious. You told me not to talk just now. Jiao Yan was furious. She raised her hand and patted his chest. You can say it now. She had finally gathered her courage and was ready to talk to Lu Yi about this matter. However, Lu Yi played this trick. Lu Ye's chest was already broken in several places. After being patted by her, he immediately groaned. Jiao Yan panicked and blushed. Her action was too intimate. She did not know why she did it just now. She quickly patted Lu Ye's chest to comfort him. However, after rubbing twice, She felt that something was wrong. For a moment she froze. I'm fine. You don't have to worry about it. Lu Yi waved his hand and said, I did have a guess about this. I only confirmed it after you told me. Jiao Yen tried to calm herself down, but she did not know what to say. Seeing her like this, Lu Yi asked, Where is Bansi now? Jiao Yen looked at him faintly. She's dead. How did she die? Lu Yi was shocked. I killed her. Jiao Yen played it down. But do you feel sorry for her? Lu Yi was speechless. After a long time he said, Why did you kill her? Jiao Yen snorted coldly. My incarnation's cultivation method is special. It requires a body of primordial yin. After what you did to her, she can no longer cultivate. What's the point of keeping her? But Lu Yi opened his mouth and did not know what to say for a moment. No wonder he had not seen Bansi since then. It turned out that this was the reason. Bansi was killed by Jiao Yen. However, Bansi was Jiao Yan's incarnation. Should he take revenge? How could he take revenge? He couldn't take revenge on Jiao Yen. That was unreasonable. His mind was in a mess. The truth he had been searching for many years was suddenly placed in front of him. However, Lu Yi found that the result was not what he wanted. Suddenly he frowned. That's not right. Jiao Yen blinked. What's wrong? Lu Yi looked at her. Senior martial sister, have you forgotten that I also cultivate a secret technique like incarnation? If he did not have the precious blood incarnation, he would have been deceived by Jiao Yen. However, when he thought about it carefully, some things did not make sense. Jiao Yen pursed her red lips and did not speak. Lu Yi continued, If you really killed her, how could you know so much about her? So, you didn't kill her. You took her back. It was just like how he took back his precious blood incarnation. After he took back his precious blood incarnation, he could clearly see everything that the precious blood incarnation had experienced. What's the difference? Jiao Yen looked at him stubbornly. The truth is that there is no Bansi in this world. There is a difference. Lu Ye's expression was serious. If Bansi was really killed by Jiao Yen, then everything would completely disappear. However, since Bansi was taken back, it was different. Bansi had become a part of Jiao Yen. In other words, she was originally a part of Jiao Yen. Sooner or later, she would be taken back. It was just that what happened last time had happened earlier. Jiao Yen was annoyed. I'm telling you this today to tell you that Bansi's matter has nothing to do with me. Moreover, I have already been married. Senior martial sister has already been married? Lu Yi was shocked. He had never heard of this at all. Jiao Yen said, If I hadn't been married, where would Shen-er come from? Lu Yi blinked. Didn't you pick up Chu Shen? He also. I see that your face is ruddy. You should be fine now. Heal yourself. Saying this, Jiao Yen angrily pulled Lu Yi aside and shrank into the shadow. Her heart was full of helplessness. Why did Chu Shen tell others everything? Furthermore, Han Ci had originally appeared in front of Lu Yi and Chu Shen with a different appearance, so even if something had really happened, Lu Yi and the others shouldn't have been able to track her down. However, at the last moment, Han Ci had revealed her true appearance to Lu Yi. Bansi was her precious blood incarnation. What Bansi did was the manifestation of her inner thoughts. However, until today, Lu Yi still did not understand why Bansi did that. As a result, Lu Yi was in an awkward position today. Perhaps she was unwilling? The precious blood incarnation probably did not want Lu Yi to remember a face that had nothing to do with her. Originally, she wanted to have a good talk with Lu Yi to solve their problems. However, this talk did not solve the problem. Instead, it became more troublesome. On the other side, Lu Yi grimaced in pain. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only continue to lie on the ground and heal himself. 2 days later, Lu Yi felt much better. He stood up to investigate. For 2 whole days, Jiao Yen ignored him. When Lu Yi was recuperating earlier, he had roughly surveyed the surroundings. This place was like a secluded room. There were a few lit incense candles all around. The light in the room wasn't too dark, but it wasn't too bright either. Strangely, the candles did not show any signs of burning. It was as if they could continue to burn until the end of time. There was a window on both sides of the room. Red curtains hung from the window. Right in front of him, there was an exit. The door was tightly shut. Didn't he get sucked in by the ghost palanquin? Where is this place? With doubts, Lu Yi walked towards the tightly shut door. He raised his hand and pushed it. However, the door did not budge. He channeled his magic power but still could not push it open. Lu Yi frowned. He raised his hand and pulled out the Pan Shan saber. Jiao Yan's voice rang out. Don't do anything. If you touch anything here, something bad might happen. Actually, there was no need for her to remind him. Lu Yi felt it himself. Almost at the same time he pulled out the Pan Shan saber, an invisible malice enveloped him. It was as if he dared to use the saber, nothing good would come of it. Jiao Yan had clearly experienced this before. That was why she reminded Lu Yi. Since she had spoken, she did not hold back. She reminded Lu Yi, we seem to be in that ghost palanquin. That ghost palanquin is not that big, right? Lu Yi asked. When he observed it on the Wanxiang Sea, the ghost palanquin was not that big. It could only hold one person. Although this secluded room was not too big, it could not hold only one person. The ghost palanquin has its own secrets. Look outside the window and you will know. Chapter 2078. Lu Yi walked to the window and lifted the hanging red curtain. Looking out, he saw multicolored beams of light shuttling back and forth like fish. Beams of light were constantly thrown down, and new ones were born. The outside world looked grotesque. This is... Lu Yi showed a look of surprise. Jiao Yan said, this palanquin is moving at a terrifying speed. After saying that, she shook her head. No, it shouldn't be called moving. It should be said that it's shuttling through space. What you see before you is just a phenomenon caused by the shuttling through space. Where is it going? Lu Yi asked. I'm not sure. Jiao Yan also wanted to figure out where it was going, but she had no clue so far. Lu Yi walked to the other window and found that the situation was the same as here. He was shocked. Inside the palanquin, he couldn't feel the palanquin moving at all. The space inside the palanquin was extremely stable, as if it really was a secluded room. Thinking about the terrifying power that suddenly erupted from the palanquin, Lu Ye's heart trembled. This thing, could it be a supreme treasure? But looking at the universe, the number of supreme treasures was limited. Why had he never heard of such a supreme treasure before? Jiao Yan clearly knew nothing about the palanquin. But the current situation was that he and Jiao Yan were trapped here. The origin of this palanquin should be the same as that of the ox monster. They both came from a place called Star Abyss. Jiao Yan suddenly said, it wasn't strange to have such an inference because the ox monster recognized the palanquin and was very eager to get on it. Senior sister knows about Star Abyss? Lu Yi asked. I've never heard of it. Jiao Yan shook her head. Actually, I'm more curious about the door that suddenly appeared on Jade Sword Island. When something happened on Jade Sword Island, Lu Yi was the first to arrive with Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao. Jiao Yan arrived later, so she didn't know what happened before. Lu Yi sighed. It's related to the insect race. They carried out an inexplicable sacrifice on Jade Sword Island, using the lives of 2 Rizhao and all the cultivators on Jade Sword Island as the price to open the door. They also used something that looks like a clay jar. I've never seen it before. What does it look like? Jiao Yan asked. Lu Yi described it in detail. Jiao Yan was also at a loss. She clearly didn't know what the clay jar was. So, the Zergs were the ones who opened the portal, and they even paid the price with the lives of 2 Rikashi. There are 3 of them. I injured the 3rd one and sent him back to the Mermaid Island. I was going to interrogate him later. Now that he was trapped in the ghost palanquin, he didn't have the chance to ask anything. The insectoids paid such a huge price, and they chose Jade Sword Island. Could this have something to do with the descent of the Great Influence? Jiao Yan was bewildered. I think so too. The insectoids obviously know something, but right now, we have no way to verify it. The door they opened on Jade Sword Island should be connected to the Star Abyss, and the strength of those fellows who came from the Star Abyss is very strange. Lu Yi wasn't sure about the other 2, but he knew that even Jiuyan wasn't a match for the bull demon. With such terrifying strength, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was invincible. Jiuyan said, "That bull demon must have forged his Tao foundation. That's why he's so powerful." Forged his Tao foundation? Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. Shrouded in the shadows, Jiuyan's bright eyes looked at him. "You have a good relationship with Ma Bin. Haven't you asked him about his Tao foundation?" Ma Bin had forged his Tao foundation. Previously, his Tao foundation was damaged, and he had been healing in the three-world island for several years. Lu Yi shook his head. He really didn't ask Ma Bin about this, and he didn't know much about the Tao foundation. Jiuyan sighed. On the path of cultivation, Rikashi is the peak. Since ancient times, it has always been like this. Many cultivators have reached their limits and couldn't advance any further. Although there is an ancient rumor that after Rikashi, cultivators have to forge their own Tao foundation to have the possibility to advance further, there is no standard or specific cultivation method to forge the Tao foundation. That's why there is the outer body incarnation method, the inner core method, and other kinds of methods. These are the helpless actions of Rikashi when they can't advance any further. Did Senior Ma Bin forge his own Tao foundation? Lu Yi asked. Jiuyan nodded. That's why he's so powerful. What about you? If I knew how to forge my Tao foundation, I wouldn't have outer body incarnation, I wouldn't have. Jiuyan looked at him in annoyance. She stopped mid-sentence and changed the topic. In the entire galaxy, including Ma Bin, there are no more than 3 people who have successfully forged their own Tao foundation. And they all had their own fortuitous encounters. No one can imitate them. Lu Yi finally understood why Ma Bin was stronger than the others when they were all at the peak of Rikashi. As for what kind of fortuitous encounter Ma Bin had to forge his own Tao foundation, Lu Yi didn't know. Ma Bin was from the previous Jiuzhou era. He had a long lifespan, so it wasn't strange for him to have his own fortuitous encounters. Then Lu Yi realized something else. What about Changfeng? Does he include the 3 people who have forged their Tao foundation? Of course not. Senior brother Changfeng is strong, but he's still within the limits of Rikashi. That's not right. Lu Yi was puzzled. If that's the case, doesn't that mean Senior Ma Bin is weaker than the bull demon? Back then, Ma Bin was besieged by Changfeng and the others. As a result, his Tao foundation was damaged. On the other hand, they were 4 against 1 this time. At first, they couldn't do anything to the bull demon. Even the power of the sword gourd didn't work. The sword gourd was a treasure, but the bull demon was able to withstand it without any injuries. How terrifying was that? The strength that he displayed seemed to be much stronger than Ma Bin's. Jiuyan said, even those who have forged their Tao foundation have differences in strength. That bull demon came from the Star Abyss. There must be something mysterious in the Star Abyss. In the entire galaxy, including Ma Bin, there were no more than 3 people who had forged their Tao foundation. But this time, the 3 uninvited guests from the Star Abyss were all people who had forged their Tao foundation. It was obviously not a coincidence. This undoubtedly signified one thing, and that was that this place, Star Abyss, very likely had a method to establish one's Tao foundation. This was also the reason why Jiuyan didn't panic even though she was trapped here. She even had some expectations because the ghost palanquin came from the Star Abyss. It was very likely that it would bring her to the Star Abyss. In that case, there was hope for her future, which had been trapped for so many years. If that was the case, then this was an opportunity for her. But she didn't expect that Lu Yi would also be involved. Lu Yi could feel Jiuyan's thoughts and faintly discerned her expectations. But now that she was trapped in the ghost palanquin, whether she could escape or when she could escape was still unknown. Thinking about it carefully, the sudden appearance of the red vortex alarmed the Constellation Palace in the depths of the Wanxiang Sea. Its projections suppressed the door. Under the cover of the treasure's power, the 3 powerful enemies' strength rapidly weakened. This gave Rikashi the chance to deal with them. Their weakening was obviously related to the suppression of the door. The bull demon was very flustered at that time and wanted to leave through the door. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed. Since he couldn't leave, logically speaking, There shouldn't be anything coming from the other side of the door. But in fact, the ghost palanquin came. Just a moment before the ghost palanquin came, the Constellation Palace's projection faded to the point where it was almost invisible. It inexplicably gave people the feeling that the Constellation Palace deliberately let it come. Why did the Constellation Palace let the ghost palanquin come? Was it because they couldn't resist it? Or was the ghost palanquin's arrival not harmful to the starry sky? Lu Yi didn't know. After that, the ghost palanquin took Jiao Yan away. This was obviously because of its strength. Because before the ghost palanquin made such a move, its power radiated across the entire Wanxiang galaxy. At that time, Jiao Yan was the strongest in the Wanxiang galaxy. As for himself, it was purely an accident. He could sense that the ghost palanquin's counterattack was something he couldn't resist at all. But for some reason, the moment the red ribbon touched him, the ghost palanquin didn't kill him. Instead, it pulled him in. The current situation was very clear. As long as there wasn't too much of a commotion in the ghost palanquin, it should be safe. And there was a high probability that the ghost palanquin would bring them back to the star abyss. This could be inferred from the bull demon's previous reaction. The star abyss? What kind of place was that? Why were the cultivators from the star abyss able to forge their Dao foundation so easily? Perhaps these doubts could only be answered when they truly arrived at the star abyss. Since they were already there, they might as well take things as they came. For the next period of time, Lu Yi cultivated while recuperating. Jiao Yan silently sat in a corner, neither of them disturbing the other. They only occasionally chatted to pass the time. On this day, Lu Yi, who was meditating and polishing his soul-subduing secret art, suddenly opened his eyes. This was because a strange sound came from the ghost palanquin that had been deathly silent all this time. It was as if something was sliding, and there was a rustling sound. But when he looked in the direction of the sound, he couldn't see anything. "Come here!" Jiao Yan shouted at Lu Yi. Of course, she also noticed such an obvious movement. Lu Yi's heart warmed. Ever since they were trapped in the ghost palanquin, Jiao Yan had done her best to appear indifferent and rarely made any useless exchanges with him. But when something really happened, she still showed concern. The ghost palanquin had been quiet all this time, but it suddenly reacted today. It was obviously abnormal. Lu Yi hurried to Jiao Yan's side. Just as he steadied himself, the tightly closed door of the palanquin suddenly opened. Then, a red ribbon quickly retracted. At the end of the ribbon was a figure. That person had a baffled expression. Clearly, he still hadn't figured out what had happened. He was thrown to the ground by the red ribbon and rolled a few times before coming to a stop. He immediately stood up and circulated his magic power, vigilantly sizing up his surroundings. With a boom, the opened door of the palanquin closed again. In the corner of the enclosed space, Lu Yi, who was standing beside Jiao Yan, met the eyes of the person who had suddenly appeared. The other party's face was immediately filled with hostility. He raised his hand and summoned a powerful magic treasure. "Fellow Taoists, there are no grievances or enmity between us. Why did you launch a sneak attack?" Chapter 2079. The cultivator who suddenly appeared in the ghost palanquin didn't look very old, only in his 30s or 40s. However, his aura was extremely pure, unlike ordinary sunshine. He clearly misunderstood and thought that Lu Yi and Jiao Yan had ambushed him. Lu Yi raised his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist, you misunderstand. It wasn't us who ambushed you." That person frowned. "There are only two of you here. If it wasn't you, who else could it be?" Lu Yi said, "To be honest, we're also trapped here," he slowly explained. The other party was skeptical, but neither Lu Yi nor Jiao Yan showed any hostility. Moreover, he felt that he absolutely couldn't fight here. Once he did, it was very likely that something bad would happen. Lu Yi was well aware of this. Like fellow Taoists said, this is the space inside the ghost palanquin? After a simple exchange, Lu Yi learned that this person was called Qinli. He was also unlucky. Originally, he was cultivating in his own cave. Who would have thought that a red ribbon would appear out of thin air, and then he came here dizzily? One had to know that when he was cultivating in seclusion, There were layers of formations inside and outside his cave abode. He was confident that no one in this world could ambush him without alerting him. In the end, he still fell for it. Moreover, he didn't even see what the ghost palanquin looked like. Compared to Lu Yi and Jiao Yan's encounter, he could only be described as unlucky. At the very least, Lu Yi and Jiao Yan knew the general situation. This is the inside of the ghost palanquin. We're all trapped here. Lu Yi nodded. Chen Li frowned and said, "How long have you two been trapped here?" "About half a month. Don't you two have a way to escape?" "If we did, why would we still be here?" Chen Li was clearly unwilling. For the next half a day, he had been looking for a way to leave. Unfortunately, this space was sealed and there was no way out. While he was busy, Lu Yi and Jiao Yan were also secretly communicating. Originally, the two of them thought that the ghost palanquin would bring them back to the Star Abyss. However, Chen Li suddenly appeared. He was obviously also dragged in by the ghost palanquin. This undoubtedly meant that neither Jiao Yan nor Lu Yi were special existences. Apart from them, Chen Li also met the criteria of the ghost palanquin. Therefore, Chen Li, who was cultivating in seclusion, appeared here. Based on Lu Ye's observations, Chen Li's strength was probably on par with Jiao Yan's. As for the galaxy he came from, Lu Yi had never heard of it. Clearly, it was not connected to the Wanxiang Sea. This was not strange. The starry sky was vast, and even in the heart of the Wanxiang Sea, only a small portion of the galaxies were connected to it. With one more person in the ghost palanquin, Lu Yi and Jiao Yan's interactions were no longer as awkward. A few days later, the same commotion as before was heard again. Lu Yi immediately opened his eyes and exchanged glances with Jiao Yan. Both of their expressions changed. When he saw Chen Li, he had guessed that the ghost palanquin might capture more people. Now, it seemed that it was indeed the case. I wonder which unlucky bastard is going to suffer this time. Beside him, Chen Li swiftly got up and rushed towards the door of the palanquin. He had already asked Lu Yi and found out that the door of the palanquin was always in a sealed state. It would only open for a moment when a newcomer was captured and then close again. So, if he wanted to leave, he had to seize that moment of opportunity. Lu Yi turned to look at him. He actually had the same idea, but he felt that things were not that simple. Moreover, he had vaguely mentioned this to Jiao Yan before, but Jiao Yan was unwilling to leave the ghost palanquin. If his previous speculation was correct, the ghost palanquin would take her to the Star Abyss. She did not want to miss this opportunity. Any cultivator who had reached her level of cultivation and was ambitious would not miss this opportunity. Even if the future was unknown, they had to explore it first to understand. At the same time, in the galaxy outside, two figures were chasing and fleeing at an extremely fast speed. The person fleeing in front shouted as he ran, "Ma Bin, don't go too far." If Lu Yi was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that the fleeing fellow was Chang Feng. When he failed to ambush Lu Yi that day, he knew that he could no longer stay in the Wanxiang galaxy and immediately fled. Lu Yi had chased him for several days with Xiao Gua and was furious. After Chang Feng left the Wanxiang Sea, he wandered the starry sky, but a few days ago, Ma Bin suddenly came to him and chased after him. How could he be a match for Ma Bin alone? He could only escape. Along the way, many of his magic weapons were used up, and he was in an extremely bad state. He felt that he could not hold on any longer. This trip was probably his death date. Ma Bin's powerful voice came from behind him, injuring my Dao Foundation and ambushing my junior. Today, I will settle the score with you. Ma Bin did not care too much about injuring his Dao Foundation. In the fight between cultivators, death and injury were inevitable. Countless enemies had died in his hands in the past 10,000 years, and he had long been aware that he would be killed. What really made him want to kill was Chang Feng's sneak attack on Lu Yi. Therefore, after leaving 9 regions that day, he killed all the way here. At the beginning, he told Lu Yi that he knew where Chang Feng Association was hiding. This time, he did not find the wrong place. While speaking, he punched out from afar. Chang Feng sensed something was wrong and tried to resist, but his body still shook, and he spat out blood. In terms of cultivation, the two were almost the same, but one had cast the Dao Foundation, and the other had not. Their strength was simply worlds apart. If it weren't for the protection and escape of many magic weapons, Chang Feng would have died long ago. My time is up. Chang Feng sighed in his heart, knowing that he could not escape this time anyway. His mind calmed down, and his face showed a determined look. At this moment, he suddenly turned his head to look in a certain direction. In that direction, a bridal sedan chair had appeared out of nowhere. Almost at the same time he saw the bridal sedan chair, a red ribbon stretched out from the door of the sedan chair and rolled towards him. Chang Feng was shocked and he quickly wanted to dodge. But how could he dodge? The red ribbon easily wrapped him up, and he was directly taken into the sedan chair. Seeing this, Ma Bin, who was chasing after him, was furious. His whole body suddenly burst out a strong light, and he instantly turned into a ball of light and hit the sedan chair. However, this time, he hit nothing. When he stood still again, the strangely appearing bridal sedan had disappeared without a trace, and so had Chang Feng. Ma Bin frowned and spread out his powerful divine sense to search around, but he found nothing. In the ghost palanquin, the moment the door opened, Chen Li's body flashed and rushed out. This time, he actually managed to escape. In the darkness, a loud laughter came. A little ghost palanquin actually wants to trap this Chen, what wishful thinking. Lu Ye's expression changed when he saw this. Was this really possible? However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, he saw Chen Li's figure, which had already charged out, appear at the door of the sedan. At some unknown time, there was a red ribbon wrapped around his body. Under the swing of the ribbon, his entire body shot back like an arrow from a bow. With a bang, he was stuck to the wall facing the sedan chair door and slowly slid down. The corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. Sure enough, it was not so easy to escape from here. Another red ribbon came in, and Lu Ye quickly looked away, wanting to see which unlucky bastard it was this time. Just like the first time Chen Li appeared, this unlucky bastard rolled on the ground a few times before he hurriedly got up and looked around vigilantly. Senior brother Chang Feng? Jiao Yan looked at the battered figure in shock. She didn't expect the unlucky bastard to be dragged in this time to be Chang Feng. Lu Ye's expression slowly turned cold as he watched the drama unfold. He didn't forget Chang Feng's sneak attack on him that day. If it weren't for the fact that Chang Feng had many tricks up his sleeve, he would have died that day. He didn't expect the ghost sedan chair to drag Chang Feng in today. This really was a case of enemies meeting on a narrow road. Jiao Yan? Chang Feng also revealed a stunned expression, but when he saw the familiar figure standing next to Jiao Yan, his heart trembled. Lu Ye. His killing intent suddenly surged. He thought about how he had been chased by Ma Bin to the point of no return, but in the blink of an eye, he had turned the situation around and even saw Lu Yi here. Haha. He couldn't help but laugh, but as he laughed, his injuries worsened, and he coughed violently. After calming down a little, he raised his finger and a bright light appeared on his fingertip. He coldly looked at Lu Yi and said, "You will repay Ma Bin's favor." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. "Your injuries were caused by Senior Ma Bin?" Chang Feng's injuries were too obvious. It was obvious that he had just gone through a tough battle. Lu Yi was originally curious as to why this guy was so heavily injured, but after hearing Chang Feng's words, he understood the whole story. Ma Bin was very efficient. It was just bad luck that Chang Feng was captured by the ghost sedan chair and escaped disaster. That's not right. Lu Yi suddenly remembered something. If the ghost sedan chair's standard was to capture the strongest person in a certain area, then the one who came in this time shouldn't be Chang Feng, but Ma Bin. He had chatted with Chun Li about this before and learned that he was indeed the strongest person in the galaxy he was in. Lu Yi only had this conjecture because Jiao Yan was chosen in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. However, Chang Feng's appearance overturned this idea. Why was it Chang Feng and not Ma Bin? Chang Feng clearly didn't want to answer his question. It was already embarrassing enough that he was injured like this, so how could he rub salt on his wounds? He only stared at Lu Yi with a murderous look, but he didn't actually attack. This was because he suddenly felt an inexplicable malice shrouding him. This malice was at a level he couldn't resist at all. Lu Yi looked at him provocatively. Jiao Yan frowned, not knowing what to do. She couldn't let Chang Feng attack Lu Yi, but the grudge between Chang Feng and Lu Yi wasn't something she could resolve. Is there a grudge? Just as the atmosphere gradually became tense, Qin Li's voice came. He sat at the foot of the wall and wiped the blood from his nose. That hit just now wasn't light. He asked Lu Yi this question. Although they didn't have much of a friendship, he had been with Lu Yi for a few days and was barely familiar with him. Great grudge. Lu Yi sneered and looked at Chang Feng. Why aren't you attacking? If he dared to attack, he wouldn't have a good ending. Lu Yi was also confident that he could withstand a blow from Chang Feng in this state. Every day, he either had guests at home or went out to pay a New Year's visit. His legs were broken. Today was like welcoming the god of fortune. I wish everyone a prosperous year. Chapter 2080. Inside the ghost palanquin, Chang Feng's expression changed several times, but he didn't dare to make a move. He used his powerful divine sense to investigate the malice in the air, but he couldn't find anything. He had no idea where he was or why Jiao Yan and Lu Yi were here. All he knew was that he had been swept here by a strange palanquin and was lucky enough to escape Ma Bin's pursuit. Since you won't make a move, don't blame me for being impolite. Lu Ye's eyes drooped slightly as he spoke in a cold voice. He never expected that the ghost palanquin would capture Chang Feng. There was a deep hatred between the two, and Chang Feng's killing intent towards him was obvious. He didn't want to stay in the ghost palanquin with such a person. Only by getting rid of him would he be able to rest easy. Now that Chang Feng was seriously injured, it was undoubtedly the best opportunity. With a flick of his finger, 3 drops of treasure blood flew towards Chang Feng in a triangular formation. As they flew, the treasure blood quickly twisted and turned into 3 clones. You dare! Chang Feng was shocked. Lu Ye's decisiveness surprised him greatly, because if he wasn't mistaken, he couldn't casually make a move here. The terrifying malice was absolutely not fake. Once he made a move, he wouldn't have a good ending. He didn't believe that Lu Yi hadn't noticed this. But Lu Yi still made a move. Had he overlooked something? Lu Yi had arrived here earlier than him, so perhaps he had found a way to avoid it? He didn't have time to think about it because he had already experienced the power of Lu Ye's treasure blood clones. When he chased Lu Yi all the way here, Lu Yi had used this method to escape. Sensing with rapt attention, Chang Feng found that the 3 clones rushing towards him had a violent aura and could explode at any time. If he was at his peak, such a situation couldn't be considered to be too dangerous, and he would naturally be safe and sound if he utilized his defensive magic treasure. But all his magic treasures had been completely exhausted from Ma Bin's pursuit, and he himself was heavily injured and in a bad state, so how could he have any extra defensive methods? You want me to die? I'll kill you first. Chang Feng's expression turned ruthless. He knew that if he wanted to live, the only way was to kill Lu Ye's main body. Stop! Jiao Yan's delicate voice rang out as she rushed towards Lu Yi. The clash between Lu Yi and Chang Feng had erupted too quickly. She didn't have time to react at all. Her actions were completely instinctive. She wanted to protect Lu Yi from Chang Feng's attack. But how could he make it in time? At such a close distance, Gale's attack arrived in the blink of an eye. Lu Yi let out a muffled groan, blood bursting from his body as he flew backwards and crashed into the wall. However, Chang Feng did not feel any joy at having succeeded. Instead, his eyes trembled violently. He looked at the 3 doppelgangers who had rushed to his side. Their auras were so violent that they seemed like they would explode at any time. However, they strangely stopped. There was only one thought in his mind. He had been tricked. All of Lu Ye's ruthlessness and decisiveness was an illusion. He had no intention of self-destructing that strange doppelganger. He had only created this illusion to force himself to make a move. Faced with the situation just now, he had no choice at all. If it were anyone who had just arrived here, they would have no choice because that was completely the instinctive reaction of a cultivator when faced with a fatal threat. The moment Lu Yi was injured, the terrifying malice became incomparably thick. Chang Feng even had a feeling that an invisible gaze was watching him from behind. Very good. Chang Feng looked at the distressed Lu Yi who was sitting at the foot of the wall with Chun Li, and his face was filled with unwillingness. Then, like a burning candle, Lu Yi began to melt from head to toe. In just 2 or 3 breaths of time, a living person had disappeared, along with everything on his body. It was as if all traces of Changfeng's existence had been erased. In this secluded space, there was only silence. Lu Yi looked in the direction that Changfeng had disappeared. The corners of his eyes couldn't help but twitch, filled with dread. Although he had already felt that he couldn't casually make a move here, otherwise something bad would happen, he didn't think that things would be so serious. He had targeted Changfeng and forced him to act. On one hand, it was because the two of them already had a grudge against each other. On the other hand, he wanted to borrow Changfeng's hand to see what the consequences would be if he made a move here. So, even though he had suffered a blow from Changfeng, he hadn't allowed the doppelgangers to self-destruct. Now, he had seen, even if Changfeng was seriously injured, he wouldn't have been so easy to kill, but he had been killed so quietly without leaving a trace. Although Changfeng's death made him very happy, what he had seen throughout the process made his heart heavy. This ghost palanquin, was it really a starry sky supreme treasure? This. Chen Li, who was on the side, was obviously frightened and speechless for a long time. Only Jiao Yan sighed. Speaking of which, she didn't have much of a friendship with Changfeng, and there was even some friction between them. After all, Changfeng was the instigator behind her being forced to leave the Wanxiang Galaxy. But in any case, she was still a member of the Wanxiang Galaxy, and this label could not be erased. It was because of this that she had come forward to plead for leniency and saved the lives of Yuan Sei and the others from Lu Ye's hands. Today, she didn't want any conflict between Lu Yi and Changfeng. But now that things had come to this, how are you? Jiao Yan looked at Lu Yi. After taking Changfeng's blow, Lu Yi deliberately didn't resist it too much, so it was obvious that he was seriously injured. While speaking, Jiao Yan wanted to go over to check the situation. "Don't come over!" Lu Yi shouted, looking up at her, and slowly shaking his head with a dignified expression. Jiao Yan immediately noticed and panicked. "It's fine." Lu Yi comforted her, "It should be fine." Just now, after Changfeng died, the terrifying malice suddenly transferred to him, causing his mind to tremble. Although it was Changfeng who injured him just now, he was the one who took the initiative to condense the precious blood clone. Since Changfeng died, he naturally couldn't come out unscathed. However, under the shroud of malice, Lu Yi didn't feel any fatal threat, which made him feel a little relieved. As he waited in fear, the malice slowly dissipated. Lu Yi let out a long breath and looked into Jiao Yan's concerned and worried eyes. "It's fine." Jiao Yan nodded and sat back down. Lu Yi recalled his precious blood clone and took out a healing spirit pill to swallow, then immersed himself in investigating his source spiritual acupoint. Just now, under the shroud of malice and the boundless threat, he clearly felt that the talent tree's kindling was a little abnormal. However, the situation was critical at that time, and his life could be in danger at any time, so he didn't have the time to investigate. Now that he looked at it, the talent tree's kindling had indeed changed a lot. The kindling had become much brighter, and he could vaguely see a small sapling growing inside the kindling. Was it a blessing in disguise? The talent tree's transformation this time was extremely difficult. It had been 3 months since it turned into a kindling, but it still hadn't finished transforming. Before, there hadn't been much change, but this time, the progress was obvious. Lu Yi didn't know why there was such a change, but it was obviously related to the malice of the ghost palanquin. He even intended to trigger the malice a few more times. This way, the transformation of the talent tree should be faster, but considering Changfeng's fate, he gave up. The ghost palanquin definitely had its own will, and that malice was the manifestation of its will. In that case, the people who were captured by the ghost palanquin were all its conscious choices. In the Wanxiang Sea, it chose Jiao Yan, then it chose Chen Li, and then it chose Changfeng. Only his entry was an exception. Also, according to what Changfeng said, he was being chased by Ma Bin before, but why did the ghost palanquin choose Changfeng and not Ma Bin? Ma Bin's strength was obviously higher than Changfeng's. However, this guy was really unlucky. He had coincidentally escaped Ma Bin's pursuit, but in the end, he died in the ghost palanquin. This grudge was thus resolved. While he was healing his wounds, Lu Yi discovered something that made him feel awkward. He had been imprisoned in place by an inexplicable force. He could cultivate, heal, and make small movements, but he couldn't get up or leave his current position. This was clearly the ghost palanquin's punishment for his previous actions. Lu Yi was speechless. He secretly transmitted this matter to Jiao Yan, and Jiao Yan immediately looked at him sympathetically. In the following days, every once in a while, an unlucky person would be captured by the ghost palanquin. The interior of the ghost palanquin slowly became lively. Almost all of those who had been captured were famous figures in the starry sky. They were all top powerhouses in their respective galaxies. Jiao Yan was very knowledgeable and recognized a few of them. Even if she didn't know the rest, she had heard of them. Because Lu Yi was confined to the spot and couldn't move, and the number of people gradually increased, Jiao Yan simply sat beside Lu Yi. Thanks to her, Lu Yi more or less understood the origins of these powerhouses. Because he and Jiao Yan were the ones who knew the whole story the best, almost every newcomer would ask them about the situation. The two of them didn't hide anything and told them everything they knew. They even told the newcomers everything that had happened on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Among the many powerhouses, Lu Yi only cared about one. It was a tall young man with long purple hair and an extremely demonic temperament. He looked to be in his early 20s. However, such a young man was a powerhouse that no one present could ignore. The first great demon venerable of the Zixuan demon planet, Ziji. The enmity between Lu Yi and Zixuan was even greater than Changfeng's. In the Jade Conch Galaxy, Zixuan's army was destroyed, and more than 10 demon venerable level powerhouses died in battle. After that battle, it was said that Zixuan had been gathering intelligence and information about Kyushu. Obviously, they didn't intend to let the matter rest. But because of Kyushu's previous performance, they didn't dare to act rashly for the time being. Ziji obviously knew Lu Ye's identity, but he didn't show any strange behavior. Since he was captured, he had been sitting quietly in one place, quietly resting. The more he was like this, the more vigilant Lu Yi was. End of chapter. Chapter 2081. Inside the ghost palanquin, many figures were sitting quietly. Some were alone, some were in groups of 2 or 3. They were communicating with each other using their divine sense. Including Lu Yi, there were 9 people with different auras. Among them, there were 2 women and 6 men. There was one whose gender could not be determined. This person was called Phantom. He was a shadow that was constantly changing. Not only was it impossible to tell whether he was a man or a woman, but it was also difficult to tell whether he was a man or a woman from his voice. But after Jiao Yan's introduction, Lu Yi knew that this phantom was the current leader of the ghost race. Among these 9 people, only Lu Yi was at the early stage of the Sunshine Realm. He was very unique among this group of strong cultivators. Because there were only 2 women, besides Jiao Yan, the other female cultivator called Su Wan was very close to Jiao Yan. This Su Wan was the 5th person to be captured. She gave off a very clean feeling. Her beauty was also quite outstanding, and her body was curvaceous. But unlike her clean temperament, her body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog. Even though there were so many experts present, not a single one of them knew of her background. She was a top expert who shouldn't be unknown, but it was as if she had suddenly popped out from some corner of the world. Jiao Yan also secretly warned Lu Yi to be careful of this Su Wan. She obviously felt that this woman was not simple. On this day, Lu Yi had nothing to do, so he was chatting with one of the strong cultivators. The reason they could talk was mainly because this strong cultivator was from the 5-color domain. He was a strong cultivator from the Stone Clan, called Jianghu. On the Vientiane Sea, the 3-world island had a good relationship with the 5-color island. It was no secret that Lu Yi and Swan and I were friends. Over the years, the 5-color merchant guild had made a fortune on the Vientiane Sea, and the 3-world island played a part in it. Naturally, the strong cultivators of the 5-color domain had long heard of Lu Yi, the master of the Wanxiang Sea. There was also a sunshine from the 5-color domain who came to visit Lu Yi to express his gratitude. With such a natural relationship, Lu Yi and Zhongyue could naturally talk about it. As they were talking, Jianghu suddenly turned his head and looked at the door of the ghost palanquin. He raised his eyebrows. Oh? Is there another newcomer? He was the 7th person to be captured in the ghost palanquin. He naturally knew what it meant when the ghost palanquin opened. He had seen this scene twice. Initially, he wanted to use this opportunity to leave the ghost palanquin, but after knowing what happened to Qin Li, he gave up. Since the ghost palanquin had captured them, it was clear that it would not let them go easily. The others also noticed the abnormality of the sedan door and turned their heads to look. They saw a red silk ribbon appear out of thin air and retract. A figure fell into the sedan and rolled on the ground awkwardly. He hurriedly stood up and looked around vigilantly. Then, he froze. This was an awkward situation that all the newcomers had to face. The interior of the palanquin was not large to begin with. With so many experts gathered in such a short period of time, the newcomers would be frightened out of their wits, thinking that they had fallen into a tiger's den, no matter how strong their cultivation was. Aya, another sister has finally arrived. It was the mysterious Su Wan. She was sitting not far from Jiao Yan. When she got up, she enthusiastically waved at the new cultivator. Sister, come over here. Don't be afraid, you can't fight here. The newcomer was a female cultivator. Her temperament was extremely delicate, like a flower that had been ravaged by a storm. Anyone who saw her would inevitably feel pity for her. Feeling Su Wan's enthusiasm, she looked around and found that although there were many experts here, they were all sizing her up. No one had any ill intentions. She immediately understood that Su Wan did not lie to her. Just as she was about to walk towards Su Wan, a voice came from the corner. Is it Taoist Water Immortal from the Infinite Realm? The person who spoke was called Xing Yuanzi. Judging from his posture, he obviously knew this newcomer called Water Immortal. Water Immortal looked toward the voice and was delighted. Taoist Xing Yuanzi? She hurriedly walked over. Anyone would be at a loss if they suddenly appeared in such a place. Since she met someone she knew, she naturally had to go over and inquire about the situation. Soon, Water Immortal came to Xing Yuanzi's side. Their divine senses surged as they communicated. What a pity! Su Wan smiled and shook her head. There were not many female cultivators here. It was rare for one to come, so she wanted to get closer to her. However, Lu Ye's expression changed. Water Immortal from the Infinite Realm. If he wasn't mistaken, wasn't this Su Yuqing's close friend? Back then, when he set off for the Azura field from Mount Fengsuan, Su Yuqing had given him a jade token, saying that it was something that belonged to Water Immortal from the Infinite Realm. Because Water Immortal was in the Azura field, Su Yuqing had told him that if he encountered any trouble in the Azura field, he could ask Water Immortal for help. However, on that trip to the Azura field, Lu Yi did not see Water Immortal and did not know how to contact her, so he had given up. Was this Water Immortal that Water Immortal? Lu Yi was puzzled. Logically speaking, there should only be one Water Immortal from the Infinite Realm. There shouldn't be so many names, especially with her cultivation. Thinking about it, he rummaged through his storage ring and quickly found the jade token that Su Yuqing had given him back then. Water Immortal, who was talking to Xing Yuanzi, suddenly turned to look at him. Xing Yuanzi also said, the two over there, one is the Lord of the Myriad Elephant Sea, Lu Ye, and the other is the Tao Master of the Myriad Elephant Island, Jiao Yan. You may have heard of them, but they are the ones who know the most about the ghost palanquin because the cause of the incident was in the Myriad Elephant Sea. The two of them were also the first to arrive here. If fellow Taoist wants to know more, you might as well ask them. Thank you for your guidance, fellow Taoist. Water Immortal stood up and bowed. Then I'll go ask them. Go ahead. Xing Yuanzi nodded. Narcissus then walked straight towards Lu Yi. When she got close, Water Immortal bowed first and said in a soft voice, Greetings, fellow Taoist Lu. Lu Yi nodded. At this moment, he was certain that Water Immortal in front of him was Su Yuqing's friend because her aura was exactly the same as the aura left in the jade token. Water Immortal looked at the jade token in his hand and understood. Did Big Sister Yuqing give this to you? She had only given this jade token to Su Yuqing. Now that it had appeared in Lu Ye's hands, The situation was naturally very clear. Back then, I went to the Azura field. Before I left, senior sister Su gave this to me and told me that if I needed help, I could ask you to take care of me. Water Immortal asked, "May I ask, what is your relationship with big sister Yuqing?" If they weren't close, Su Yuqing wouldn't have given her jade token to others. However, the last time she met Su Yuqing was many years ago, and she hadn't heard Su Yuqing mention Lu Yi. Lu Yi blinked. Dao companion. This wasn't a secret in the Vientiane Sea. Jiao Yan was originally looking at Water Immortal curiously, but when she heard this, she immediately stared at Lu Yi. Su Wan noticed this and looked at Jiao Yan, then at Lu Yi. As if she had discovered something interesting, her eyes brightened. Water Immortal couldn't help but cover her red lips. Big sister actually found a Dao companion? She couldn't help but look at Lu Yi from head to toe, wanting to see what was so special about him that he could actually make Su Yuqing fall in love with him. However, no matter how she looked, she couldn't tell much. She couldn't help but recall Xing Yuanzi's introduction just now. The Master of the Vientiane Sea, this wasn't a light title. Water Immortal had been cultivating in seclusion in the Infinite Realm for so many years, so she really didn't know anything about the changes in the Vientiane Sea. No one had ever mentioned this to her before. After all, it wasn't convenient for the Infinite Realm to communicate with the Vientiane Sea, and there weren't many direct interests involved. It's the truth. Lu Yi nodded. Senior Apprentice Sister Water Immortal, please forgive me. I was punished by the ghost palanquin and couldn't get up. I apologize for my rudeness. Water Immortal was suddenly enlightened. No wonder Lu Yi had been sitting here so casually. So there was a reason for this. Ghost palanquin. Is it that strange bridal palanquin? Water Immortal asked. Before she was captured, she had clearly seen the ghost palanquin. Yes. Lu Yi nodded. Water Immortal frowned for a moment. She simply sat down in front of Lu Yi. This matter is far too bizarre. There are many things I don't understand. Can Junior Apprentice Brother dispel some of my doubts? Her temperament was far too delicate. As she frowned, boundless pity appeared. Let alone Lu Yi, even a female cultivator like Su Wan felt her heart tremble. Of course. After a moment, Water Immortal finally understood everything. So, you're saying that the ghost palanquin will eventually bring us to a place called Star Abyss. And that place will allow us to forge our own Dao foundation? Water Immortal asked. Before Lu Yi could finish, Su Wan continued, that's right. Otherwise, why do you think everyone is waiting here quietly? Sister Water Immortal, it's good that you're here. This way, we'll have 3 female cultivators. We should get closer to each other in the future. Water Immortal smiled kindly at her, then looked at Lu Yi. This deduction makes sense, but it doesn't seem to have any concrete evidence. When others asked, Lu Yi naturally wouldn't say too much. But since Water Immortal was Su Yuqing's good friend, there was no harm in saying more. If it was said that it didn't have any evidence at first, then it does now. What do you mean? Those captured by the ghost palanquin are all at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. They're also the strongest cultivators in their respective regions. Seeing Water Immortal looking at her in confusion, Lu Yi explained, my region is an exception. It's not included. Jiao Yan sighed. Although she didn't see it with her own eyes, she was sure that Lu Yi must have done something after she was captured by the ghost palanquin. That's why she was dragged in as well. Speaking of which, she had implicated Lu Yi. Actually, after Taoist Chun-Li, there was another person called Chang Feng who was captured. At that time, he was being chased by an even stronger cultivator. But the ghost palanquin only captured him and ignored the other stronger cultivator. Why is that? Water Immortal was confused. According to Junior Brother, shouldn't the ghost palanquin choose the stronger cultivator to capture? That's right. Lu Yi nodded. But what if the stronger cultivator has already forged his own Dao foundation? I'm afraid that's the only explanation for why the ghost palanquin didn't choose him. Chapter 2082. The ghost palanquin had its own will. This could be seen from how the ghost palanquin punished Lu Yi after he plotted to kill Chang Feng. Since the ghost palanquin had its own will, why did it capture so many sunshine? What was its purpose? It was not easy to fight inside the ghost palanquin. This was probably a form of protection for those who were captured. Without this protection, Lu Yi would definitely have to fight to the death with Venerable Purple Extreme. However, it was because of this protection that everyone could sit here peacefully. Lu Yi was also puzzled about one thing. Why did the ghost palanquin choose Changfeng instead of Ma Bin? After thinking about it, it might be because Ma Bin had established his own Dao foundation. The Star Abyss was a place where one could easily establish their Dao foundation. Ma Bin already had his own Dao foundation, so he was naturally not selected. Lu Yi and Narcissus did not hide their conversation, so everyone heard it clearly. Xing Yuanzi said, "Fellow Taoist, even so, there is no way to be sure that the ghost palanquin will take us to the Star Abyss." Lu Yi nodded, "Yes, so this is only a basis, and also my own conjecture." Everyone fell into deep contemplation. After cultivating for so many years, they'd all already walked to the limits of their bodies, and there was no possibility of further advancement. A portion of them had once fumbled with the method to establish their Dao foundation, but none of them succeeded. If the Star Abyss was really a place that could allow one to easily establish their Dao foundation, then everyone would absolutely flock like a flock of ducks. Compared to the Star Abyss, I am more curious about another matter. ZG sat opposite Lu Yi and looked at him. "Where did fellow Changfeng go? Why were you punished by the ghost palanquin?" Only Jiao Yan and Qinli knew about Changfeng. The others did not know. Besides this time, Lu Yi did not mention it. ZG was not the only one with this question. Everyone else had the same question. Since they could not fight inside the ghost palanquin and could not escape, then Changfeng, who was captured, could not have disappeared for no reason. Take a guess. Lu Yi turned to look at him. ZG narrowed his eyes slightly, and everyone else's expression turned cold. They immediately realized that Changfeng was most likely dead. Lu Ye's punishment must have something to do with Changfeng. There were many things in this ghost palanquin that they didn't know. Just as Lu Yi and ZG were talking, the ghost palanquin that had been stable all this time suddenly shook violently. It felt as if they were sitting on a speeding and bumpy carriage. Everyone's expression changed. This was something that they had never encountered before. "Fellow Taoist Lu, what's going on?" the water deity asked in alarm. This sudden change caught her off guard, and she almost fell down. She hurriedly steadied herself. Lu Yi shook his head. "I don't know." In the time it took to say these two sentences, the shaking became even more intense. Along with the shaking, a strange force faintly came out of the ghost palanquin. Under the effect of this force, all the people in the palanquin had their magic powers sealed inside their bodies, making them unable to stand steadily. The situation quickly worsened. The space inside the ghost palanquin was spinning upside down. It was as if the ghost palanquin had been sucked into a storm and was drifting about in the storm. At this moment, many of the top Sunshine players were like ordinary people without the strength to truss up a chicken. Following the violent turbulence, they were constantly thrown to various places. With a bang, Chun-Li's entire body hit the wall of the palanquin. Before he could slide down, he was thrown to the other side. Zhongyue collided with Xing Yuanzi. Zhongyue did not react at all, but Xing Yuanzi's face was bruised and swollen. He had a helpless expression. ZG, the famous great demon venerable, was also flailing his arms and legs, desperately trying to stabilize his body. However, it was to no avail. It looked extremely comical. There was also a Sunshine player called Dustless. He was crying out as he was thrown here and there. After a few times, he was dizzy. Only Phantom, who was like a ball of flowing water, stuck to the walls of the sedan, safe and sound. Just as she was watching this rare scene with great interest, she suddenly saw Zhong Yu's burly figure uncontrollably coming towards her. She panicked and screamed, "Don't come over here." Lu Yi sat in place, not moving at all. He did not expect that the punishment given to him by the ghost palanquin would be a blessing in disguise. He could feel that after the ghost palanquin began to shake, his spiritual power had become extremely scattered, and he could not use it at all. The moment he realized that something was wrong, he grabbed Jiao Yan's arm. At this moment, Jiao Yan's entire body was stuck to his left side. Only then did she avoid the same embarrassment as the others. There was another person who was also sticking to him. It was the mysterious Su Wan. This woman was smart and had always been by Lu Ye's side. Almost at the same time Lu Yi grabbed Jiao Yan, she grabbed Lu Yi and was determined not to let go. At this moment, she and Jiao Yan were hugging Lu Yi from both sides. Lu Yi was a little dizzy for a moment. He only felt that his two arms were full of amazing elasticity and softness. Suddenly, he heard Phantom scream. He hurriedly turned his head and saw Zhongyue crash into Phantom, directly flattening her. In that direction, Daffodil rushed over with a pale face. Her two hands subconsciously grabbed around, like a drowning person trying to grab a life-saving straw. She just happened to fly over Lu Ye's head. Lu Yi only felt a pain in his head. His body involuntarily straightened and his neck tilted in the direction Daffodil was flying. Daffodil, who was about to fly away, grabbed his hair and fell down. Coincidentally, she fell directly into Lu Ye's arms. His nose was filled with a fragrance. In his arms, there was a ball of softness like water. Lu Yi was stunned. Daffodil was not any better. When she came to her senses, her face turned red. She hurriedly said, "Sorry for the offense, fellow Taoist." One of her hands wrapped around Lu Ye's neck while the other grabbed his clothes, trying to fix herself to Lu Yi. She was in a hurry. Compared to being thrown here and there without a care for her image, and perhaps constantly colliding with other people, she was more willing to stay like this. Inside the ghost palanquin space, it was chaos. Only Lu Ye's side was as calm as a mountain. Not only was he hugging women on his left and right, there was also another in his arms. Especially the way Daffodil was hugging him, it was unimaginably ambiguous. Lu Ye's expression turned solemn. He looked down and his heart was as still as water. A ball of flesh on the left side of his waist was pinched by a small hand and fiercely twisted. Lu Yi did not seem to feel it. "Fellow Taoist Lu, save me." Accompanied by the shout, Chen Li bared his fangs and brandished his claws at him. He clearly realized that if he wanted to settle down in this kind of turbulence, he could only rely on Lu Ye's strength. It just so happened that he was thrown toward Lu Yi this time. This was a good opportunity. Just as he got close to Lu Yi, two jade fists blasted out and hit his eyes. A jade foot also kicked up and stepped on his face. "Aya, do." Chen Li screamed and flew away. Beside Lu Yi, whether it was Jiao Yan, Su Wan, or Daffodil, they all lowered their heads and their faces were crimson red. The turbulence continued and became more and more intense. After a full hour, this strange situation suddenly disappeared. The ghost palanquin returned to its previous tranquility. Figures fell from different positions. They all got up in a sorry state and hurriedly tidied up their appearance. They were all famous people, so it was inappropriate for them to suddenly become so miserable. On Lu Ye's side, Daffodil stood up like a frightened rabbit and hurriedly tidied up her messy clothes and hair. With a red face, she whispered, "I'm sorry." If it was really an unrelated person, it would be fine, but Lu Yi was Su Yuqing's Taoist companion. She and Su Yuqing were very close. If Su Yuqing knew about today's matter, she didn't know how to explain it. "It's just an emergency. Senior Sister Daffodil, you don't have to worry about it." Lu Ye's expression was serious. His serious appearance relieved Daffodil a lot of the awkwardness. At this moment, Su Wan also let go of Lu Yi. She wasn't as shy as Daffodil, but said generously, "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Lu Yi nodded slightly. Jiao Yan naturally wouldn't thank Lu Yi. She just silently let go of him. Lu Yi touched his waist without a trace. It was burning with pain. There must be a bruise there. At this moment, Zhongyue was squatting beside Phantom, who looked like a pool of flowing water. He poked him with his hand. There was no response, so he poked him again. Phantom's weak voice came from the pool of flowing water. "What are you doing? I'm not dead yet." Zhongyue chuckled. "All right, as long as you're not dead." He stood up and turned to look at Lu Yi. "Fellow Taoist Lu, has something like this never happened before?" Everyone else also looked at him. Lu Yi shook his head. It has never happened before. Ever since we entered this place has been extremely stable. It's the first time something like this has happened. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Xing Yuanzi rubbed his chin and pondered. Ziji couldn't help but glance at him. He didn't say anything. Although no one knew what had happened, they had to admit that this wasn't a bad thing. Instead, it was a good thing. This was because change was what everyone wanted to see. If there was no change, then it would be despair. Just as the Zhu Rizhao were deep in thought, a creaking sound suddenly rang out. 10 pairs of eyes looked in the direction of the sound. They saw the closed door of the sedan suddenly open. Is there another newcomer? Someone was bewildered. In the past, every time the sedan door opened, a newcomer would be swept in. There had never been an exception. But this time, when the door opened, there was no sign of a newcomer. That's not right. Lu Ye's expression suddenly changed. He slowly stood up. Jiao Yan's eyes were filled with surprise. Junior brother, you. Ever since he was punished by the ghost sedan, Lu Yi had been unable to move. It was as if his entire person was imprisoned in place. Apart from cultivating, he couldn't do anything else. He couldn't even stand up. But now, he actually stood up. This clearly meant that the ghost sedan's punishment on him had disappeared. Lu Yi walked forward. Soon, he arrived in front of the sedan door without any obstructions. He looked at the open door and the scene outside. He turned to the others. Everyone, I think we can go out now. Many of the people in the sedan already had their guesses. This time, after the sedan door opened, there was no sign of a newcomer. The door didn't close either. This was an obvious sign. End of chapter. Chapter 2083. They could go out. This was definitely the best news everyone had heard in a while. Is this the Star Abyss? Someone asked softly. According to Lu Ye's previous conjecture, the ghost palanquin would bring them into the Star Abyss, then this should be it. But looking through the palanquin door, it seemed that there was nothing special. Of course, this might be because the investigation was not comprehensive enough. If they went out and carefully investigated, they might find something unusual. In front of the open door, 10 figures stood quietly, but no one moved. If this was really the Star Abyss, then there would be many experts like the ox demon that appeared on the thousand-form sea. Anyone who went out first might be in danger. Everyone was well aware of this, so even though they longed for confirmation, no one dared to do anything. They were all experts who had lived for many years, so they still had this bit of patience. Since everyone is so modest, then let me be the vanguard. Zhongyue stretched his muscles and walked out step by step. He did not mean to take the lead, but compared to others, the Shi clan's physique was undoubtedly the strongest and most suitable for this matter. He knew that he could not avoid it, so he simply took the initiative to offer a favor. The others naturally had no objection. However, before Zhongyue walked out, a huge repulsive force suddenly came out of the ghost palanquin. The next moment, the 10 Rizhao, without exception, were all swept uncontrollably toward the palanquin door under the effect of the repulsive force. This change made everyone puzzled, and it gave people the feeling that the ghost palanquin was a little impatient with them, so it spat them out. The figures hurriedly stood still, quickly alerted the surroundings, and a powerful divine sense spread out. Lu Ye's side was naturally with Jiao Yan. Looking around, he saw a deep starry sky, surrounded by stars, and a big sun in the distance. Sensing the surroundings, the starry sky energy was not active. Lu Yi suddenly frowned. The situation was not as he thought. The others obviously also noticed, and they all looked surprised. The ghost palanquin is gone. Wu Chen suddenly said. Only then did the group of Rizhao realize that the ghost palanquin that brought them here had disappeared without a trace. If not for Wu Chen's reminder, no one would have noticed. What do you think, fellow Taoist Purple Extreme? Xing Yuanzi turned to Purple Extreme Demon Venerable and asked. ZG shook his head slowly. Although I don't know which galaxy this is, it's definitely not some Star Abyss. Xing Yuanzi was silent. Obviously, he agreed with ZG's words. He was not the only one who thought so. Everyone else thought so too. If this place was really the Star Abyss, It would definitely give people a different feeling. However, everyone sensed their surroundings but did not notice any abnormalities. Lu Ye's previous speculation was obviously wrong. This matter was inexplicable. The ghost palanquin spent several months capturing the 10 experts from various places. Then, it disappeared after sending them to this galaxy. Lu Yi didn't understand either. The ghost palanquin definitely came from the Star Abyss because that bull demon recognized the ghost palanquin. Since that was the case, why would it send them here? Was there something different about this galaxy? I'll take my leave first. As ZG spoke, his demon essence surged and swept in a certain direction. Since this was not the Star Abyss, there was no need to stay any longer. As a demon, he didn't have much friendship with others. Moreover, he could feel that Lu Yi was eyeing him covetously. Naturally, he didn't want to stay any longer. It was more important to return to Zixien first. I'll take my leave too. As Dustless spoke, he activated his escape technique and chose another direction. Following closely behind Dustless, the others also left one after another. During this period of time, those who had some friendship with Lu Yi left their musical notes and imprints with each other, agreeing to meet again at the Wanxiang Sea. Even Su Wan, who was not familiar with Lu Yi, did the same. Soon, only Lu Yi, Zhiyan, and Water Deity were left. Water Deity obviously had something to say to Lu Yi, so she stayed behind. Lu Yi was about to ask when he suddenly sensed something and turned to the side. Fellow Taoist Phantom is still here. Aren't you leaving? He had almost forgotten about the Ghost Clan leader and immediately raised his guard. It was obviously not because of his negligence, but because the Ghost Clan leader had lowered her sense of existence. Fellow Taoist Lu, do you want to do business with me? Phantom's strange voice came from her flowing body. What business? Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. Phantom said, I know you have a grudge against Zixien. This is a rare opportunity. How about I help you kill ZG? Fellow Taoist, are you that confident? Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. ZG was the #1 demon venerable on the Zixien demon planet and was extremely powerful. Phantom actually said that she could help him kill ZG. Such an understatement undoubtedly showed Phantom's great confidence in herself. But then again, the Ghost Clan specialized in assassination. As the Ghost Clan leader, Phantom's attainments in this field must have reached the peak. In a head-on confrontation, he might not be ZG's match. But in a sneak attack, there was no one in the entire universe that he could not kill. What do I need to pay? Lu Yi asked. Phantom laughed and said, I heard that you have a treasure in your hands. That's purely a rumor. Lu Yi denied immediately. Phantom did not take it seriously. Fellow Taoist, if you think it through in the future, you can let Phantom send me a message. She knows how to find me. As she spoke, her already blurry figure gradually faded and then completely disappeared. Lu Ye's divine telekinesis probed, but he could not find any traces at all. He's gone, Jiao Yan said from the side. Lu Yi nodded and then looked at Water Deity, who remained at the side. Senior sister, is there anything else? Water Deity said, I just want to ask how Big Sister Yuqing is doing now. Compared to the others who had more or less stayed in the ghost carriage for a period of time, Water Deity was undoubtedly the most unlucky. She had just been captured in the ghost carriage when she was sent here. She did not even have time to ask about Su Yuqing's situation just now. Lu Yi immediately told her about Su Yuqing's current situation. Water Deity said happily, I see. If I want to find Big Sister Yuqing in the future, I can go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, right? The 10,000 Elephant Sea has a bug path that is directly connected to the 9 states. Whether Yuqing stays at Mount Fangsuan or oversees Fangsuan Island, it will be very convenient for you to find her. That's good. Water Deity stood there quietly, fiddling with a strand of hair with her fingers. Her face was slightly red. Suddenly, she sent a voice transmission. Please don't let Big Sister Yuqing know about what happened before. Although it's wrong to hide it from her, there are some things. Lu Yi understood tacitly and blinked at her with a puzzled expression. Did something happen before? Water Deity smiled and bowed. If that's the case, I'll take my leave first. After water deity left, Lu Yi looked at Jiao Yan. Let's go too. Jiao Yan did not say anything and only nodded. Senior sister, do you know which galaxy this is? Lu Yi asked. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask around. Although Jiao Yan had traveled to many galaxies, she had never been to this place. Judging from the surrounding stars, this was an unfamiliar place. However, no matter which galaxy it was, returning to the 10,000 Elephant Sea would not be a problem as long as they could find out the location. The two of them randomly chose a direction. Lu Yi summoned her planetary boat and drove it forward. Half a day later, Lu Yi, who was steering the planetary boat, suddenly felt Jiao Yan tugging at her clothes. Look over there. Lu Yi looked in the direction of the voice and frowned slightly. She immediately changed direction and flew in that direction. Soon, they arrived at their destination. Looking around, they saw that this vast expanse of space was filled with the remains of a great battle. There were even floating continents of various sizes floating around. This was obviously a battlefield, and it was extremely large. There might even be a realm here. However, because of this great battle, even the realm had been shattered, leaving behind only these floating continents. Lu Yi and Jiao Yan exchanged a look, both of them shocked. It was not that there was no war in the universe. On the contrary, such things were very common. However, a battlefield of such a scale was very rare. A battle that could shatter a realm was definitely fierce beyond imagination. Not only were there remnants of realms on the battlefield, but there were also the remains of countless battleships. Judging from the wreckage of these battleships, many of them were actually river-class battleships. One had to know that this kind of battleship was extremely expensive to build. Back when the Zixian army attacked the 9 states, they had also deployed such a battleship. However, there was only one such battleship. Apart from that, what was left behind the most on the battlefield was another kind of strange wreckage. These wreckages were in the shape of beasts and humans. Most of them were incomparably tall. Lu Yi stared at the wreckage that looked like a giant wolf floating in front of her and frowned. If she wasn't mistaken, this was a suit of armor. Moreover, this suit of armor was of very high quality. However, she didn't know what kind of battle it had been through, but the entire suit of armor was in tatters. Somewhere inside the suit of armor, there was a large pool of blood. Jiao Yan's expression changed. She grabbed the suit of armor and grabbed at a certain part of the suit of armor. Unexpectedly, she pulled out an ice-cold corpse. It looked like a human. There was a hole in its chest. This should be a fatal wound. This is Ri Zhao. Although this cultivator had been dead for a long time, Jiao Yan could still clearly determine the strength of this cultivator when he was alive. This further proved how fierce this battlefield had been. Even Ri Zhao had died in battle. Lu Yi took another tattered set of armor and found Yu Yao's corpse from it. The two of them searched for a long time and found that there were no valuable clues left behind. Senior sister, have you heard of any galaxy that is famous for its use of suits of armor? Lu Yi asked. Suits of armor existed in the universe, but they weren't very strong. Therefore, Lu Yi found it very strange. Why would so many cultivators wearing suits of armor die on this battlefield? There were even a few of Ri Zhao's. A suit of armor that could make Ri Zhao wear such suits of armor was definitely not ordinary. Which galaxy was this? I've never heard of it. Jiao Yan shook her head. However, the universe is vast. It's not strange that there are some things that we don't know about. Lu Yi nodded and suddenly turned to look in a certain direction. Someone's coming. It just so happened that he was looking for someone to gather information. End of chapter. Chapter 2084. It was a battleship. Judging from the direction it was heading, it was most likely headed for this battlefield. Lu Yi observed the battleship for a moment and discovered that it was only a Yu Yao battleship. He immediately flew towards it with Jiao Yan. The two of them didn't bother concealing themselves, so their radiant auras were unmistakable. As the battleship slowly approached, someone suddenly exclaimed, "Two powerful auras are approaching. These auras are Immortal Realm. How can there be Immortal Realm cultivators here? This is bad." It must be those despicable Star Abyss monsters. But why are they running? Lu Yi looked at the battleship that had suddenly turned around and was clearly trying to flee. Jiao Yan guessed, they probably think we're enemies? This was the only explanation. Lu Yi had no choice but to transmit his voice to them, indicating that he didn't mean any harm, as he quickly flew in the direction the battleship had fled. Although the battleship was moving at full speed, how could it possibly outrun him and Jiao Yan? It only took a moment for them to catch up. However, the cultivators on the battleship didn't believe his voice transmissions so easily. As he and Jiao Yan approached, they continuously attacked, but to no avail. A moment later, the two of them arrived in front of the battleship. They'd thought that this would be enough to force the enemy to stop, but unexpectedly, the battleship crashed into them without slowing down at all. It seemed as if it wanted to take them down with it. If they crashed into it, nothing would happen to him and Jiao Yan, but the battleship would definitely be destroyed. How troublesome! Lu Yi sighed. He flew up and arrived outside the battleship's defenses. He raised his hand and gently pressed it down. The battleship's defenses instantly shattered as his transcendence energy surged. He floated down to the deck and stood on it. A muscular figure suddenly leapt out of the cabin. This figure was tall and slender, with distinct edges and corners. It was a leopard armor. An extremely violent energy fluctuation came from the leopard armor. As soon as it appeared, it pounced on Lu Yi. A furious voice came from the leopard armor. "Let's die together." Self-destruct. Lu Yi frowned. All leopard armors could self-destruct. This was a method that every Yanshi would incorporate into their armor. It was also their final trump card against their enemies. The energy fluctuations radiating from the armor were already at the peak of Yu Yao's strength. Clearly, the other party knew that he was no match for Yu Yao and was prepared to drag Lu Yi down with him. It was just that, what kind of grudge did they have against each other? Lu Yi had only come here to inquire about some information, but he had actually suffered a suicide attack. A jade-like hand suddenly reached out from behind Lu Yi and gently pressed on the leopard's head. Jiao Yan's mana surged ferociously like a tidal wave. In just a few breaths, the violent energy within the leopard's armor slowly dissipated. "Kill!" Another roar rang out. Suddenly, openings appeared in various parts of the warship. From those openings, one figure after another rushed out. All of them wore strange armor and rushed towards Lu Yi and Jiao Yan from all directions. Lu Yi was infuriated. He raised his hand and pressed down on the Pan Shan saber. But after probing for a bit, he couldn't help but frown. Although there were a lot of them, their strength wasn't that great. On the entire warship, the strongest one was the leopard that Jiao Yan had already subdued. The other leopard's aura was at most at the constellation level. Most of them were only at the divine sea level. Even if there were a lot of them, he could still break them with a single slash. "Stop, all of you, stop!" The leopard form Yan Jia suddenly shouted. He undoubtedly had a lot of prestige. When he gave the order, the many leopards that were charging over came to a stop. Lu Yi sighed. He looked at the leopard and said, "Can we talk now?" Jiao Yan withdrew and floated back to Lu Yi's side. The leopard Yanjia didn't say anything, but its scarlet eyes sized up Lu Yi and Jiao Yan in surprise. After a long while, it used its Fa Li, and with a series of crackling sounds, the tall and slender Yanjia turned into small pieces of armor in the blink of an eye, quickly folding and disappearing. In the place where the Yanjia originally stood, a young man with snow-white hair and fair skin appeared. This young man looked like a human, but there were a few strange patterns on his fair face. They looked like beast patterns. There was also a clear demonic aura on his body. So, he should be a demon. He slowly opened his mouth and said, "Two sirs, are not from the Star Abyss?" Lu Yi was originally sizing him up. When he heard this, his pupils suddenly shrank. "What did you say?" Up until now, only a dozen people knew about the Star Abyss. So, Lu Yi never thought that he would hear someone mention the Star Abyss here. Jiao Yan's expression also changed. The young man didn't seem to hear him. He only sized him up. After a long while, he said, "As expected, two sirs aren't those monsters from the Star Abyss. You don't have that kind of aura." "Aura?" Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly remembered that the 3 experts who walked out of the red vortex on the 10,000 forms did indeed have a unique aura. It was an extremely evil and violent aura. It was very unique. He calmed his mind and said, "Where did you learn about the Star Abyss?" "From where?" The young man was stunned. Then he smiled bitterly. "The monsters from the Star Abyss wreak havoc in the starry sky. Who doesn't know now? That place is a remnant battlefield of the Star Abyss." He pointed behind Lu Yi. Lu Yi looked back and found that he was pointing at the battlefield that he and Jiao Yen had seen before. But the monsters from the Star Abyss wreaked havoc in the starry sky? Where did this come from? The 3 monsters from the Star Abyss that appeared on the 10,000 forms should all be dead. But from the young man's words, it seemed that this was something that everyone knew. Could it be that many years had passed since he and Jiao Yen were trapped in the ghost palanquin? But it couldn't be. It had clearly only been a few months. No matter how great the changes in the starry sky were, it couldn't have happened to this extent in just a few months. He was confused. The young man opposite him was even more confused. "Since the 2 of you are Immortal Realm experts, why do you know nothing about this?" Immortal Realm? Lu Yi was even more confused. What kind of realm was the Immortal Realm? He had never heard of it before. After a moment of silence, he said, "The 2 of us have been cultivating in seclusion on some desolate planet. We haven't come out for hundreds of years. We only came out a few days ago, so we don't know much about the current situation in the starry sky. Could you explain a thing or two to us?" Hearing him say this, the young man came to a realization. So that's how it is. Since they had confirmed that Lu Yi and Jiao Yen were not monsters from the Star Abyss, the other Yanshi gathered around them relaxed. A moment later, in the cabin of the warship, Lu Yi and Jiao Yen were warmly received. 2 Immortal Realm experts were worthy of respect no matter where they went. With the young man's explanation, Lu Yi and Jiao Yen slowly learned some information. The other party's background was as Lu Yi thought. He was from the Yao clan. Because he was born 5th, he called himself Leopard 5. According to him, the calamity in the starry sky began on a certain day 300 years ago. At first, people thought it was the birth of a new insect path. No one would have thought that the red vortex, which was different from the ordinary insect paths, was connected to a place called the Star Abyss. After the birth of the insect path, strange existences constantly broke into this part of the starry sky. Each of them was incomparably powerful. Any visitor from the Star Abyss had the ability to kill enemies above their level. They could almost be described as invincible among those of the same level. They brought a huge disaster to this part of the starry sky. Because of their arrival, one realm after another was plunged into misery and suffering. Everywhere they passed, there was endless death and slaughter. The various major forces quickly realized that things were not good. The experts from all sides joined forces and began a hunting operation against the visitors from the Star Abyss. This operation lasted for nearly 100 years. It was unknown how many experts died because of it. It was also unknown how many treasures were consumed. Only then did they finally exterminate the visitors from the Star Abyss who broke in. However, things were not over yet, because in the process of hunting, there were even more visitors from the Star Abyss who broke in through the red insect path. Some top forces joined forces and set up a line of defense near the insect path to prevent future troubles. During this period of time, several more insect paths that connected to the Star Abyss were opened in various parts of the starry sky. It had been 300 years since the birth of the first insect path in the Star Abyss. There were more than a dozen insect paths that connected to the Star Abyss in the starry sky. Every insect path in the Star Abyss was a battlefield with countless cultivators gathered to guard it. This was because the 300 years of death and slaughter proved one thing. If the Star Abyss monsters were not blocked in the insect paths, they would definitely bring destruction to the starry sky. There was once an insect path from the Star Abyss in that remnant battlefield, but it disappeared later. Therefore, the cultivators guarding there moved to another place. We came here mainly to collect some usable wreckage. The many years of war have made the supplies on the line of defense a little tight. Then how did the insect path of the star abyss disappear? Lu Yi asked. Leopard 5 shook his head. I'm not too sure. I'm only in the spirit realm, and it hasn't been that long since I ascended. Perhaps only immortal realm cultivators know these secrets. After listening to him, Lu Yi also understood some key points. The spirit realm he mentioned corresponded to the Yu Yao he knew, and the immortal realm corresponded to the sunshine. Is there anything else you two want to ask? Lu Yi said, Have you heard of the 10,000 Elephant Sea? Leopard 5 shook his head slowly. Never heard of it. What about the reincarnation tree? Are you talking about the ancient tree of life? No. Lu Ye's heart sank. If Leopard 5 had never heard of the 10,000 Elephant Sea, then so be it. Although the 10,000 Elephant Sea was famous, it was not to the extent that everyone in the starry sky knew of it. But he had never heard of the reincarnation tree. This shouldn't be. Leopard 5 was Yu Yao after all. Spirit realm, immortal realm. The insect path of the star abyss had appeared 300 years ago. Now the entire starry sky had withered. There were more than a dozen insect paths in the star abyss, and every one of them was a battlefield. All these signs pointed to one thing. Do you have a star map of the nearby area? Lu Yi asked after calming himself down. Leopard 5 hurriedly took out an item and handed it to Lu Yi. This includes the star maps of the hundreds of nearby galaxies. Chapter 2085. Leopard 5's mission was to collect usable materials from the nearby battlefield. Now that the warship had arrived at the battlefield, it naturally had to get busy. Inside the cabin, Lu Yi and Jiao Yan checked the star map left behind by Leopard 5, not missing a single detail. But the more they checked, the more serious their expressions became. There were hundreds of galaxies in the star map, but they had never heard of any of them. They were all unfamiliar galaxies. Even some of the space wonders within these galaxies had never been heard of before. Looking at each other, Lu Yi felt his throat dry up. Jiao Yan said with a bitter expression, Junior brother, this might not be the same galaxy we know. Although he already had these guesses in his heart, Lu Yi still found it hard to accept. There are many galaxies? Lu Yi looked at Jiao Yan. Jiao Yan said, Although I don't want to admit it, this should be the truth. A look of reminiscence appeared on her face. Someone once told me that our starry sky is not the only one. It is just one of many starry skies. There are other starry skies besides our starry sky. Who told you this? Lu Yi asked in surprise. A madman. So I didn't take it seriously, but now it seems that it might just be his crazy talk, or he might know something. Where is that madman? He died long ago. He told me this when we just entered the constellation. Lu Yi was silent. A dead madman's words were not worth paying attention to, but now it happened to him. We were brought here by the ghost palanquin. I thought it would take us to the star abyss, but it didn't. It actually brought us to this galaxy. A warning? Lu Yi was puzzled. The ghost palanquin had its own will, but why did it do these things? If it was really a warning, then what was the point? They had come to this star abyss and had no idea how to return. Now that I think about it, the violent shaking of the ghost palanquin should be caused by the turbulence caused by passing through a different galaxy. Jiao Yan suddenly thought of something. Before Daffodil was dragged in, the ghost palanquin's travel had been extremely stable. This was because it had been traveling through the original starry sky. No matter how far it traveled, there would not be any turbulence. However, it was different when it traveled through the starry sky of a different dimension. That was why the ghost palanquin had such a huge commotion in the end. After arriving here, the ghost palanquin spat out the 10 of them and disappeared. The cultivation system of this Yunyuan starry sky seems to be a bit different from ours. I don't know if Senior Apprentice Sister noticed it, but the spiritual consciousness of those cultivators is generally more meticulous. It wasn't that they were strong, but that they were meticulous. This was probably the reason why they were able to control the armor better. Moreover, according to the information Leopard 5 had divulged, in this starry sky, Yan Jia was the mainstream. It was the King Dao, and all other schools were just external Dao. Lu Yi finally understood why there were so many skeletons on the battlefield. Crescent armor belonged to the category of artifact crafting, which was a branch of artifact crafting. From the looks of it, this Starry Skies artifact crafting Dao should be quite outstanding. What do we do now? Jiao Yan looked at Lu Yi. Even though she was experienced and knowledgeable, she was at a loss at this moment. This trip was just too bizarre. Lu Yi also didn't know what to do. The most important thing now was to find a way to go back. However, traveling through the starry sky of a different dimension was not something they could do. If they wanted to go back, there was only one way, and that was to find the ghost palanquin. However, the ghost palanquin had disappeared. Where should they go to find it? After pondering for a while, Lu Yi said, "The ghost palanquin deliberately searched for so many experts from our starry sky and brought them here. I'm afraid it's not for us to save this Yunyuan starry sky. We don't have that much power. I'm afraid it's a warning. They want us to see what will happen if the starry sky is invaded by the star abyss. A star abyss insect path has appeared on the Wanxiang Sea. Perhaps it won't be long before our starry sky encounters the same thing." At this point, his expression suddenly changed. "I see. What's wrong?" Jiao Yan looked at him in confusion. Lu Yi turned his head with a solemn expression. "The arrival of the general trend is the invasion of the star abyss." For a long time, he had been inquiring about the specific information about the arrival of the general trend, but it seemed that no one knew about it except for the mysterious insect race high priest. It wasn't until this moment that he suddenly understood. Jiao Yan's expression also changed. Although she didn't want to admit it, she had to admit that Lu Ye's idea was correct. The so-called arrival of the general trend was the invasion of the star abyss into the starry sky. Just by looking at the current situation of Yunyuan starry sky, it was clear that the arrival of the general trend would sweep across the starry sky. No one could escape. This was a huge disaster. If they couldn't survive it, the entire starry sky would be occupied by the monsters of the star abyss. At that time, there would be no place for the starry sky creatures to stand. Then how does the insect race high priest know about this? Logically speaking, even if he is strong, he shouldn't be able to perceive the arrival of the general trend unless he has experienced it before. But he definitely doesn't have such a long lifespan. Lu Yi recalled the various things he heard in the Blood Jade realm, and his eyes flashed. The insect race high priest doesn't have such a long lifespan, and it's impossible for him to have experienced such a thing. But what if the insect race is a guest from the star abyss? Junior brother means? Jiao Yan's expression changed. Lu Yi said, "Senior sister should have heard of the blood ancestor, right?" "Of course. I heard that the blood ancestor's several realms were formed by his body after he died." She was a little confused. They were clearly talking about the insect race, so why did the blood race get involved? Yes, the blood ancestor is the origin of the blood race. Without the blood ancestor, there would be no blood race today. Lu Yi nodded. The realms formed by the blood ancestor's body are incomparably vast. Moreover, the destruction of the Minotaur's minuscule mountain was directly related to the blood ancestor. So I've always been curious about one thing. Since Sunshine is the peak of the cultivation path, how did the blood ancestor destroy minuscule mountain? How much stronger is his strength compared to Sunshine? Does such strength really exist in the starry sky? Jiao Yan understood. Such strength doesn't exist in the starry sky, but if it's the star abyss, Lu Yi nodded. So to our starry sky, the blood ancestor is a monster from the star abyss, and so is the insect race. Now that the general trend is about to descend, the insect race must have used some special method to sense something, so they began to unite with the blood race. Back then, the insect race envoy called Lice Dragon had said that the general trend was an opportunity for the insect race and the blood race. Perhaps they could use it to dominate the starry sky. Because in the star abyss, these two races could borrow a powerful force, which was the power of their own race. To be able to reproduce and survive in the star abyss, the insect race and the blood race must have countless experts. All this time, Many things that had puzzled Lu Yi became clear. So, the general trend has descended in our starry sky before? Jiao Yan's expression changed. The insect race and the blood race were outsiders in the starry sky. This undoubtedly meant that the starry sky had been invaded by the star abyss, but that was definitely a matter from a very long time ago, because no one knew about it now. Perhaps it wasn't just the insect race and the blood race. There were other races that had come from the star abyss, but after countless years of survival and evolution, they had slowly integrated into the starry sky. Only the insect race and the blood race hadn't changed, and they were hated by others everywhere. That should be it. Lu Yi nodded. We had the experience of being invaded by the star abyss, but we were able to turn the danger into safety. He remembered some scattered records he had seen in the ocean pavilion of the Azura field. The information recorded in those records could undoubtedly confirm the star abyss invasion. At that time, he couldn't understand those scattered records, but now he basically understood. Our starry sky seems to be much tougher than expected. This was undoubtedly good news. Since they had the experience of successfully dealing with the star abyss invasion, it might not be impossible to succeed this time. Junior apprentice brother, I want to go to the front line battlefield. Jiao Yan suddenly looked determined. Lu Yi nodded. I think so too. No matter what the purpose of the ghost palanquin bringing them here was, since they were already here, they had to see it with their own eyes. They had to personally experience how the powerhouses of this single yuan starry sky fought against the guests from the star abyss. Moreover, if they wanted to find the ghost palanquin, joining the front line battlefield and gaining fame was also a way. Only in this way could it be more convenient to inquire about information. Both of them were sunshine. Since they had made up their minds, they naturally wouldn't hesitate. But before leaving, Lu Yi still had one more thing to ask Leopard 5. Using his divine sense, Leopard 5, who was looking for supplies outside, soon returned to the warship. After taking off his armor, he came to Lu Yi and asked, Sir, what are your orders? I want to ask if there were any special changes in the starry sky after the invasion of the star abyss, such as the starry sky's spirit energy becoming more active? Leopard 5 nodded. Yes, I have read some records. More than 300 years ago, there was a time when the starry sky's spirit energy became more and more active. Our cultivator's cultivation also became simpler and simpler, and many rare treasures that were rarely seen on ordinary days were born. Lu Yi knew that this was right. The single yuan starry sky they were born in was the sign of the star abyss invasion, because these things were happening in the starry sky. Leopard 5's expression darkened again, but since the invasion of the star abyss, the situation has been a bit wrong. What's wrong? The starry sky's spirit energy is becoming more and more silent, and cultivators' cultivation and breakthroughs are becoming more and more difficult. According to those spirit realm masters, the starry sky's foundation is being swallowed by the star abyss. If we can't resist, then sooner or later, the starry sky will become a desert for cultivators. Lu Yi and Jiao Yan were both shocked. They never expected that the starry sky would have such changes after the invasion of the star abyss. Was the starry sky's foundation swallowed by the star abyss? If this was the case, then the longer it took, the more difficult it would be for cultivators to cultivate, and the fewer powerhouses would be born. In the long run, the situation would continue to worsen until it reached a limit. End of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.